Also going to fix the water issue. You can see here, there is also rot here that has been going on for a while because I painted over this, I caulked over it, did some wood filler, and it just keeps getting worse. And what I think is happening is it's getting behind here. And the way it's getting behind here is if you look up, I think there is an issue up top where it's getting behind that top piece of trim. So what I'm gonna do while I'm repairing this sill is I'm gonna take off all this trim, figure out what's going on, and seal it up right. You can see it's happening on the other side as well. There's rot on the outside right here. Oh, and there's an ant. If I have ants here, I'm gonna be upset. But that's what we're gonna find out. That's not good. So first step, let's take this trim off and figure out what's going on, and then we'll worry about repairing the sill. Now, because I'm really curious, I'm gonna start on this side and see if we have some ant friends. I really hope I don't, but I'm gonna get behind here and start pulling this trim off. I don't want to break this siding, so I'm gonna go get a utility knife and cut the caulking along all right here. Take a look right here. So this is fairly new, this right here, this framing, probably 2 years old when I remodeled the living room. So that is in good shape, so that's good. And it looks like, okay, so we're lucky. There's no rot right here. It's a little spongy, but it's okay. We're gonna cut this right out. And all this looks to be in good shape. So yeah, I don't see any ants. So I think we're in good shape there. Cool, let's do the other side. So on the back side here, you can see all this black. This isn't mold or anything. This is just water discoloration. And I think my assessment may be correct, or my assumption that the water is following the path behind the trim. You can see right here, this is all water discoloration. So the water is getting behind this. So I am still assuming that the problem is with the top piece of trim. That is really soggy. I'll take this piece off, if I can get a grip somewhere.
Well, I'm joined now by Dana White. Dana, I've got to say that when my 3 sons, who are all mad UFC fans, when they heard I was interviewing you, I don't think I've ever heard them either more excited about a guest or prouder of their father. So for that alone, thank you.
Well, thank you, and tell them thanks for the support.
I took them all to the big McGregor-Mayweather fight down in Vegas, which presumably lined your pockets in the process. And it wasn't probably a perfect example of what you're about, really. It was an incredible theatre. It involved 2 supreme champion fighters, albeit in different disciplines. And I found it a riveting thing to watch, albeit it ended how I suspected it was always going to end. But that, to me, in a nutshell, was you all over. Vegas, high drama, high theatre, specialist pugilists at their very best, and a kind of unique encounter.
Yeah, what we try to do is try to give the best experience that we can for fans, either live or on television. It's the thing that I focus on the most. When you come to a live UFC event or an event that we're putting on, most people don't walk out and say, yeah, I don't ever want to see one of these again.
No, I mean, my sons, as I say, they got me into it, and I quickly became gripped. I loved it. In fact, I sat next to Khabib at an Arsenal match recently, and we had a long chat. And obviously, he was unbeaten and an absolute titan of the sport, but he was fascinating about it all and about you. May come to a bit of that later. But I've certainly become a great convert to it as a sporting spectacle. I think there's very little stuff like it. The thing that is intriguing about you to me is where you came from to get to where you've got to. When you look back at your journey, You know, you were born in 1969 to a 19-year-old high school dropout mum. You had a 21-year-old alcoholic father who left the home, I think, when you were 7 or 8 years old. You worked your way through some pretty tough early years, had no silver spoon, no great privilege, and yet here you are now, sitting here talking to me from this gym, and you've got a multi-billion-dollar business that's made you both extremely rich, very successful, but I'd imagine also for you yourself, that journey must be incredibly satisfying.
Yeah, it's been amazing, actually. You know, as I look back on my life and you know where I started and where I am today, it's been amazing. But I love it so much that, you know, I'm 54. I just turned 54 years old in July, and you know, I feel like I haven't even scratched the surface of what's left to do in this business and in this sport. But it's definitely been an incredible journey.
You were a road paver, a bouncer, a hotel bellman, and an apprentice boxing trainer. You've done a few things in your time. When you were doing those things, did you have a big dream?
Yeah, well, I think when you're young, those are all the type of jobs you have to do. Number one, to find out what hard work really is, and number two, to find out what it is you don't want to do in life. So I was very lucky that I had all those experiences, and by the age of 19, I figured out, didn't want to do any of that, and I knew exactly what I wanted to do. I wanted to be in the fight business, which at the time, you know, was 1988 or 1989. Sounded like the dumbest idea ever. But when you love something and you're very passionate about it, you know, and you know exactly what it is you want to do, you just get up every day and start grinding until it happens.
You come from an Irish Catholic background, as I do, and you were taught by nuns when you were younger, as I was. I had spiritual guidance from nuns. How did that impact you?
I don't know. Went to Catholic school and you know, had to go to church and all that stuff growing up. I was an altar boy when I was younger. I don't know if that affected me in a positive way toward religion, but you know, I'm not a very religious person these days. I would say it's weird because there's some things that I don't believe in much, but I believe in karma for some reason. I never really was guided by religion in any way, shape, or form as I got into my 20s.
What do you think happens to you when you die?
I think that it's it. It's over. I think that we think we're more important than we really are, because some people have to believe that to get through life. I'm not one of those people that has to believe that. Listen, maybe there is, maybe there isn't. I'd say the real answer for me is I don't know, but I don't let that guide me, and I don't let it, you know, just be a good person. You can figure out being a good person without having to believe in anything, in my opinion.
When you look again at your trajectory to where you've got to, you know, it was a wonderful report that you have $100,000 a year that you spend on sneakers. A, is that true? And B, did you ever think you'd get to a place where you could spend $100,000 a year on sneakers?
No, I actually never really thought about that ever. And I didn't even realize it until we did that complex story and we started talking about how much money I'd spent on sneakers over the last year. But yeah, no, not anything I ever thought of, and didn't think about it until it came up in that interview.
Your relationship with your parents, obviously complicated, difficult. I know you don't particularly like talking about that. I don't want to pry into that, other than to just ask whether it's had a material effect on you as a person. Do you think a lot of the drive that you have comes from those difficulties and those difficult relationships?
You're right, I don't like talking about it, but it's a great question, and I would say yes, absolutely. My relationship with my parents has definitely, you know, made me who I am today in many different ways, not just, you know, in life and in business, but as a father too. So I wouldn't change my upbringing, not one thing about it. I wouldn't change any of it. So, yeah, great question, and I agree with you.
Has it made you a better father yourself, do you think? A better parent?
100%. 100%. My parents taught me a lot about what I didn't want to be as a parent, and yeah. And I don't really talk about, I don't think I've ever talked about this, but my parents both died recently. So,
I didn't know that.
Yeah, so that's yeah, I don't like talking about it, but yeah, my parents died recently, and
Need help? For the Alliance.
How did that make you feel, given how difficult things have been?
holy shit, this is where we're going with this interview, huh? I don't, you know, I'm good with it. I'm good with everything. You know, I focus a lot on my kids and my relationship with them, and I've sort of put my relationship with my parents behind me.
Did you feel sad when you knew they died, or did you
No.
feel it was the end of a...
No, I didn't wish any ill will on either one of my parents, but you know, no, I didn't. When they passed away, I had almost no feelings about it, to be honest with you.
You didn't go to their funerals, either of them?
Yeah, listen, I took care of my father and moved him up to Maine and you know, put him to rest with his family up there, and then my mother, I had nothing to do with any of hers. Her family handled you know, her when she passed away.
I mean, it's an extraordinarily sad part of your life. And obviously, I didn't know that your parents had both died recently. And I thank you for sharing that very private information. I appreciate it. But I am curious as to, you acknowledged the drive that you had. A lot of that may have come from this quite rough time you had. But do you feel a great loss that you didn't have the love of your parents that many other people take for granted?
You sound like my wife.
I don't mean to. Well, actually, maybe I do.
No, I did not feel that way, and but there's no doubt about it. I cannot deny the fact that the way that I am built and the way the drive and all the things that I have definitely come from the relationship that I had with my parents. There's no doubt about it. But no, I have no remorse. I don't feel bad about the way that I grew up. I mean it when I say that I wouldn't change one thing about the way that I was brought up, because I truly believe had I not had them for parents, had I not had the upbringing that I did have, that I wouldn't be who I am today.
What are the things, Dana, what are the things that it taught you not to do as a parent, and what are the things that it taught you to do as a parent?
Yeah, I think that you know, the to-dos is I'm here for my kids. You know, I've been married for almost 30 years. You go through, you know, a lot of things in a marriage. I mean, I just went through some stuff last New Year's Eve. You know, these things happen. What you don't do is you don't leave. You don't quit. You don't give up, and you stay. You know, you don't stay together just for your children, but you stay. I made a commitment. 22 years ago, I had my first son, and there's a commitment there to everybody that's involved. And, you know, I've stayed in there. I'm always there for my kids, anything that they ever need. And, you know, my father taught me, you know, what it feels like to not have a father there at the house, what it's like to not have that person around all the time when you need them. And I would never do that to my kids.
You said a great quote. You talked about, my legacy to me is when I drop dead and my kids are at my funeral. I want my 3 kids to get up and say, he's an awesome dad. Is that ultimately, in the end, the real litmus test of success for you? I've seen other people say, you know, actually, if in the end your kids, when they get old enough to make that decision for themselves, if they still want to be around you, and they still love you and they still care about you, and they would speak at your funeral in a positive way about you, that in the end, that's the ultimate litmus test of success, far more than any financial benefits or gains or fights or whatever it may be.
Well said. I couldn't have said that better myself. You're absolutely right. You know, everybody's always asking about legacy, your legacy. What you did for a living isn't your legacy. Your legacy is your children and their children, and you know, how they feel about you, how they feel about. Listen, we all make mistakes, and we all fail in life at many different things. My opinion is the one thing that you can't fail is being a parent. It's the ultimate failure. It's what showed that you really weren't focused on the right things in your life if that's what you failed at.
When you referenced the incident on New Year's Eve, and obviously it went viral, everyone saw the video footage and so on, you were very contrite after that. But was the hardest thing of that actually having to talk it over with your kids?
100%. I mean, everybody was acting like there needs to be some big apology to the world. No, the apology was to my kids, for me and my wife. Nobody wants to see their dumb, drunk parents slapping each other on TMZ. You know what I mean? Our oldest son didn't talk to us for like 4 days, and you know, and the other kids had to deal with some stuff too. It's embarrassing, and the only apology that needed to be made was to our children, and the only relationships that needed to be handled immediately was between us and our kids, and we did it, we handled it, and we got through it as a family.
What was it like for you, having seen so many fighters get into scrapes and having to deal with the fallout of that? What was it like for you to suddenly be on the receiving end yourself of that kind of attention?
Yeah, it's definitely not fun, but it's something that, you know, as a man, you have to stand up and you have to deal with it and handle your business, take your lumps, and deal with whatever comes with it. And but like I said, the most important part of it is to handle it as a family first. As long as you get your family straight, I could give a shit what everybody else thinks.
Did you worry during that whole episode that you may lose everything that you'd fought so hard to build?
Nah. The people that are around me, again, when you're talking about something like this that happens, and you're talking about what everybody else, the whole world is looking at you and saying, the people who know me, and the people the circle that I keep, I've had for, you know, 40 years. So, you know, the people that I cared the most about, I knew it was going to be whatever. Everybody else, I could care less what everybody else thinks.
I want to go back to the start of UFC, because you had a couple of investor friends. They bought the franchise off you for $2 million. You'd come to Vegas, but how you got to Vegas is fascinating, because you were basically chased out of town by the mafia, by Mr. Bulger, who was, of course, a very famous mafia mobster. Tell me about that.
Yeah, it wasn't him. It was some of his guys that worked under him. But yeah, I mean, I was in Boston in you know, the early 90s, and that stuff was real back then. I mean, if you watch any of the movies or any of the documentaries that came out about it, I lived in South Boston, Massachusetts, and that stuff was very real. And at the time, you know, they had felt that I owed them some money that I felt I didn't owe, and you know, I was either going to pay it or I wasn't going to pay it. But right when I left and came back to Vegas, it was like the summer of '95. And then right after that is when all the stuff started to unravel for him. And, you know, he basically went on the run after that. And now, I mean, we had a fight in Boston a couple weeks ago. I mean, it's not even the same city. It's completely different. And South Boston is not the same place it was in the 80s and early 90s.
So that moment when you know, Whitey Bulger's people say, you know, we want $25,000, I think it was, by tomorrow at 1 o'clock. And you know that if you don't give them that money, that's probably the last call you're getting from them. It might be the last call you ever have. What does that feel like?
Yeah, I don't know if that would have actually, and it wasn't $25, it was $25,000, it was $2,500, which right. Might as well have been $25,000 to me back then. But yeah, you know, when I go back there now and look at it, at that place and at that time, you know, you realize what a scary place that really was at that point in time. But I didn't really feel that way when I was in my early 20s, you know? Yeah, I don't know how that would have played out, but I can tell you this. I got the call, I hung up the phone, picked it back up, and called Delta and got a one-way ticket back to Vegas. And what's funny is everything in life is about timing, you know? It was the time for me to come back to Vegas for all of this stuff to align and to happen. So earlier, you and I were just talking about religion and what you believe and what you don't. It's just crazy the way that things work out and how things are kind of meant to be and what will put you on these different paths in life. It's fascinating.
You've turned a business that you managed to find two investor friends, to spend $2 million buying the UFC franchise off you. But it was a very basic franchise at the time. One octagon and a few bits and pieces around it. Today, that business is worth $12 billion. It's made you incredibly rich in the process, obviously. But my simple question is, how? How did you do this?
Yeah, so it's a great question. Yeah, when we originally bought the company for $2 million, we had a few contracts. When I say a few, maybe 8 to 15 contracts, and an old wooden octagon, and those 3 letters UFC. That was it. The former owner had basically stripped all the rights and sold everything off to try to keep the thing alive. But what we did was we came in, we started to acquire some of these rights back from other companies that had bought them. We started to build, you know, the trademark back and the brand. And we had a vision for this thing. We were big fight fans, and we believed that if this was done the right way, this could be the biggest sport in the world. You know, I always had this philosophy about fighting, that it doesn't matter what color you are, what country you come from, or what language you speak, we're all human beings. Fighting's in our DNA. We get it and we like it. It doesn't have to be explained to anybody. And when you have the right fight in the right place at the right time, like you were just talking about earlier with Conor McGregor and Floyd Mayweather, everybody wants to watch it everywhere, all over the world.
Yeah.
Now we're getting to a place with streaming where that's actually starting to become possible, where we can put on a fight out here in America and the whole world can watch it at the same time on the same network. So the ceiling on this thing is what? 8 billion people are in the world. As you continue to grow the sport, this thing can actually become the biggest sport in the world. And we saw that from day one. The question was, is the timing right? And thank God it was.
Well, there were 2 politicians who had interesting takes on what you were doing. In 1996, Senator John McCain, who was a huge boxing fan, but he railed against the UFC on the floor of the US Senate. He called it human cockfighting. And he sent letters to the governor of every state asking them to ban it. And then Donald Trump came along, right when the whole business may have been up for grabs. It may not have flown, it may just have sunk. And Donald Trump turned up and stayed late at one of your events. And he carried on supporting you. And you've stayed friends ever since. And I've been friends on and off, I have to say, with Trump over the years. We've had good times and bad. But I've seen the good in him. One of those good traits is tremendous loyalty. How important, well, first of all, tell me about John McCain. How did you feel when he called it basically cockfighting?
Yeah, that happened before we bought the company. So that was one of the uphill battles that we had. Obviously, Senator John McCain did everything for the right reasons. He wanted this thing to be regulated by the Athletic Commission, rules in place, and referees and judges and proper medical testing and all that stuff. We agreed with Senator John McCain when we bought the company, and we ran toward regulation, and we wanted to get this thing regulated by all the athletic commissions, not only in the country, but throughout the world. And then, Donald Trump, when we bought the company, you know, venues didn't want this. There were no venues that wanted this thing. Now, we break every venue record all over the world, and venues everywhere want us to come. But in the beginning, nobody did. But Donald Trump saw this thing early, saw that he thought it could be successful. When you think about it, the Trump brand was here. The UFC brand was here. And he brought us in, cut us a great deal, showed up to the first fight, stayed to the last fight for both of the events that we put on in his casino. And everything that ever happened to me throughout the rest of my career, Donald Trump was the first guy to either pick up the phone and call and say congratulations or write a note and send something. You know, he was always that guy. Then Donald Trump and his son got in and actually started to compete with the UFC. So with another company. And you would always have these media people trying to put me against Trump and say, oh, and my whole thing was, I will never say anything bad about this guy. He was extremely good to me, not only in the early days, but throughout the rest of my career. And, that's all that stuff is what started the incredible relationship that I have with Donald Trump.
I mean, I've seen the good side of Trump, and we've all seen some of the bad side of him. You've remained, for reasons you've explained, extremely loyal to him. How hard is that sometimes to do that publicly?
It's not hard at all, because how I judge people is how my relationship is with them. I can have a friend that 15 other people don't like for whatever reason. I judge them off their relationship with me. And I can tell you from personal experience, Donald Trump has never been anything but loyal and incredible and an amazing friend to me.
Do you think he can become president again?
I do. I mean, people thought he couldn't become president the first time, and he did. I absolutely think he could do it again. Listen, the forces are fighting against him. They're trying to do everything they can to make sure that this guy does not even have a chance to be elected again. But yes, I mean, a majority of the country wants this guy to be the next president of the United States.
How often do you talk to him?
I talk to him several times a month. I just talked to him last week. He and I are very close. We're very good friends. I consider him a very good friend of mine, and we talk a lot.
What do you talk about?
Fights. He's a fight fan. He's a fight freak. He loves fights. Mostly what we talk about is fights. He's a fight fan, and we talk about other things, family and stuff like that too. But mostly we talk about fights.
Well, I got to know him on Celebrity Apprentice, which I ended up winning, knocking out Lennox Lewis, by the way, on my way to victory, which remains one of the all-time great pugilist achievements. But one of the early contestants who I knocked out much earlier was Tito Ortiz, who turned out to be one of the first big-name fighters that you had.
Yep, him and Chuck Liddell were two of the big stars for us when we first bought the company.
How important was it to have people like that who could energize the sport for you, who were showmen?
That's what this business is all about, basically. It's about, early on in the early days, when people doubted this business, doubted this sport, they would talk about, oh, what are you going to do when this guy retires? What are you going to do? I've been hearing that stuff for, 15 years, when we first started the company. But one of the things that I have been really good at is finding new talent, building them into stars. And look at what Conor McGregor, you were just saying it earlier too. Look what he did for Europe and other parts of the world. When you find these guys, we've got a star that breaks in Brazil. You got a star that breaks in Canada. The UK, Australia right now is on fire for us. That's basically what this business is all about, is star building.
And it's extremely lucrative. Like I've said several times, it's made you very rich. Is money important to you? I know deal making is important, but is the actual money, is that a big motivator for you?
It never has been. It's never been a huge motivator for me. If money was the big motivation for me, I probably would have retired in 2016. But no, it's not. Taking the sport to the level that we're taking it to, there's still a lot of work to do here at the UFC to get to where I envision this being from day one. And when you do what you love to do, I like breaking records. That's what I like to do. I like doing things that people say can't be done. And when you do those things, money is just what happens.
But do you know how much you're worth?
Not to the penny. I have an idea, but no, I don't really focus on that.
I mean, if you were to fall over tomorrow, God forbid, and something terrible happened to you, I mean, here lies Dana White. He was worth, boom. What would that figure look like?
Yeah, if I drop dead tomorrow, I think my family's going to do okay. They're going to be all right. They're going to make it.
Forbes said $500 million. Are they grossly underestimating your fortune?
Let me tell you this. When you go online and you type in what somebody's net worth is, every single one of them are bullshit unless it's like So you handed in your information to Forbes, and Forbes did a whole audit of what you're worth. All bullshit. Everything you see online about people's net worth.
What I really like about you, Dana, and your story is that it's a story of resilience, of determination, of getting yourself back on your feet when you've been knocked down, all the kind of Rocky Balboa things that he says in that infamous speech, or famous speech, to his son, who's being a spoiled brat, and he finally has it out with him in the street. I've seen you say that you think America, and probably the wider world actually, has gone soft, and I agree. I think it has gone soft. I think we've become a world where virtue signaling is more important than reality, where facts no longer matter. You can all pretend to be whatever you want and everyone has to go along with it, where everyone's offended by absolutely everything. How have we got to this place, and what's the way out of this kind of woke hell that we're having to endure?
Yeah, no, that's absolutely how I feel. And, you know, I can't speak for the rest of the world because I didn't grow up in any of these other places, but I can definitely speak on America. America has become so soft, it's actually, you know, it's a problem. And I tell kids all the time, if you even have this much savage in you, everything out there right now is for the taking. There was a point in time in the United States where you would look at different businesses and say, God, it's almost impossible to break into this business because it's been so established, and even the companies, all these companies that are so soft right now, everything out there is for the taking. If you have even this much savage in you, if you are willing to go out there and grind and work hard, you know, you got these people that don't want to go to work, they want to stay home and work from home and all that. And believe me, I've seen this when I've spoke before. I see it pop up in the comments, all these people saying, you're wrong, no, things can be done from home. No, it can't. You have to be in the building with like-minded people. You know how much stuff that I have on my agenda every day that needs to be done, but other things that pop up in the office, and you get a bunch of smart, hardworking people in a room together, and you go on a completely different, you know, you have to have people in the office working every day. And these people that don't want to, stay home, man. Stay home and do your thing. Good luck to you. I wish you all the luck in the world. There's going to be a small group of hungry savages out there that are going to run every one of you over. And you can sit home and you can cry and complain about how you didn't get yours, and it's because this person had this opportunity that you didn't have. It's all bullshit, crybaby stuff that's going on in the whole world, like you said, but more so in the United States like I've never seen before.
I read a great profile of you by the Financial Times, and the writer had clearly gone in with a kind of idea that maybe you were going to be some kind of egotistical monster or whatever, but he found the complete opposite. And he told some really interesting stories, one of which was as you were coming out of the pandemic, or in the middle of the pandemic, how you got all your team together, 300 people, I think, and you said, there's absolutely no way I'm going to start cutting you off, you know, firing a lot of people to save money. We're going to get through this together. And apparently the reaction from your staff was extraordinary. How important was that moment for you to prove yourself as a boss in the tough times as well as the good?
Yeah, it's so true. It's like, you know, the UFC has been this rocket ship of success since 2005, right? And nobody does anything by themselves. You build a great team around yourself, you know, smart, talented, hardworking people who sacrifice every day. They didn't see their kid's football game, or they didn't go to this play because they're out working hard to build the sport and build the company, right? Now, you're going to tell me COVID comes. COVID never really made sense to me, you know, from the beginning. The first day when everything started to shut down and it was getting weird, I got all my employees together and I said, listen, I don't know what's going on. I can't explain. I don't have the answers for you. But if any of you are scared or feel like your life is in danger or somebody at home might be in danger, you guys can go home and do whatever you have to do. My team is a bunch of solid, they couldn't be any more solid. And I tell these people how much I love them all the time. So what you're going to tell me is the first time that we ever face adversity, right? We're facing real adversity here. I'm going to start laying these people off in the scariest time in the history of the world. Good luck to you. You know, we got to save the bottom line over here. I will never pick money over people. So I was willing to give up my salary, my bonus, whatever it was going to take to make sure that everybody was comfortable that we could take care of the employees. And then I started trying to find a way to go through COVID. This is America. We've been doing this since the day this country started, is solving problems. You have to figure out, here's the problem, how's there a solution? Now in Abu Dhabi, these guys were way ahead of the curve. They were testing, they were doing all this stuff. Well, if they can test, we can test. We can figure this out. So that was always my thought process going through it. There was no way I was going to let go of my employees during the scariest time of our lifetime. We were going to stick together and we were going to fight through this together, or we were all going to sink together. That's how it was going to go.
You talked about Abu Dhabi there in the Middle East, and you're a big fan of a lot of what goes on in the Middle East, particularly in sport and other things. They're obviously getting more and more dominant now in sports like golf, with the Saudi Live League. You now have the Saudi Football League, led by Cristiano Ronaldo, but loads of top stars going out there. I'm a good friend of Cristiano, and I've been following this journey with him with great fascination. It's taken a lot of blowback from people who say we shouldn't be allowing the Saudis or other Middle Eastern countries who have bad human rights records to be doing this to sport. What's your view?
Yeah, my relationship has been with Abu Dhabi and the UAE for years now. And if you look at what that royal family has done with that country over the last 50 years, it's incredible. And they were the first ones really to do it. They started getting involved in sports and saw the whole sports thing coming. I mean, UFC has been in business with them for like 15 years. And to be honest with you, when the shit hit the fan during COVID, these guys were way ahead of the curve, way ahead of what was going on and how to test and how to create a true bubble. And that was why I ended up doing what I did with Abu Dhabi when this stuff happened. And I think you're going to see more of that. They have the money, Saudi, UAE, Qatar, the list goes on and on. They have the money and they see where this is all going. When you look at live television, now they're streaming and you can dump a whole season on Netflix and you can consume the whole season. The only thing that is really destination television that you have to watch live is live sports.
Right.
But
do you have any moral qualms about the human rights records of some of these countries, or do you think it should be just kept out of sport? That actually, I mean, I have a view that almost every country, if you put a real forensic gaze on them about reasons for not to let them have sport on moral grounds, you'd end up having to play everything in Iceland or Switzerland.
Yeah, I don't know. That's a tough one. That's a whole different subject and a whole different conversation. We do business with UAE. These guys have always been great stand-up guys. I'm sure you can find some issues with whatever. You can find some issues with lots of different companies that do business in the United States and anywhere in the world when it comes to human rights and what you think is right and what you think is wrong. I am very comfortable sitting here today telling you that my relationship with the royal family of UAE has been amazing. They've never been anything but great to us and our people. I respect them, and I consider them friends too.
There's been a lot of speculation about a massive potential fight in the octagon between Elon Musk and Mark Zuckerberg. You've been quite excited about this. Do you think it's going to happen? Do you think you will be the guy to put it on, and how much money could it generate?
Well, we were talking about that earlier on. I think that is fallen apart. I think that had it happened and had we moved forward and done it, it would have done $1 billion in revenue.
Who would have
easily.
won?
And that I don't know. I mean, if I knew the answer to that, I'd be Vince McMahon. But who wins and who loses, I don't determine. They do. But I tell you this: it would have been huge. It would have been the biggest fight in the history of the world, and no fight would have. You'd have had to have Trump versus Putin to beat that record.
Well, actually, I interviewed Chris Christie, one of the Republican candidates to be president, and he offered to get in the octagon with Trump. That would be a battle of the heavyweights.
That is true. Yeah, that is true. Listen, a lot of guys say, I want to, throw me in the octagon, and then when it comes down to actually doing it, very few people in the world will actually do it.
I think that's completely right. I mean, I think UFC fighting, of all the forms of fighting that exist, I think it's the most skilled and it's the most courageous, because what they do to each other in that octagon can often be quite terrifying.
Yeah, no, it takes a certain type of person. That's why there's very few people in the world that actually make it into the UFC and get to that level. You have to be a very special, unique, different human being in the way that you're built, made up. No, not just forget about talent and the determination and the grit that it takes to go out and train every day to become, a mixed martial arts fighter. But to get to this level of the UFC, very, very few people can do it.
Are we going to see Conor McGregor back in a high-profile fight?
He is back in the gym. He's training. And, I expect to see Conor fighting next year.
Does it matter that he's lost a few big fights recently? Does that impact on his ability to put bums on seats, sell tickets?
Well, here's what happens, Pearson. You know this. I'm sure you've seen this with colleagues and friends and people that you know. Once a certain level of money is attained, to be the person that you were coming up, to be that hungry and work that hard and be that dedicated to the sport or whatever craft it is you do, money changes everything. And Conor McGregor has made that kind of money. And it's not a knock, it's just a fact. I mean, when we sold the company in 2016, this was sort of like a Microsoft of fighting. There were a lot of people that made a lot of money, and a lot of people left, and they went and retired or moved on to, you have to have a certain type of drive to make that kind of money. And you've seen guys in this sport, when they make that kind of money, they'll fight a lot less, like Conor has, or they go on losing streaks because it's just, you are not that same person once you get that kind of money.
You lose the edge, the hunger.
Yeah. The hunger and the drive is not the same. Everything, Conor McGregor is a perfect example. Everything that Conor McGregor ever dreamed of and stuff he couldn't possibly dream of in his life, he has right now, And it's tough to be on a yacht all summer and then say, I got to get back in the gym and start grinding again. And again, it's not a knock. It's just it's the way life is, especially in the fight business.
Social media has been a massive thing for you, and you actually gave one person some great advice, because Dwayne Johnson, The Rock, did not want to go onto social media, and you persuaded him single-handedly. You said, you're mad. You should be on social media. He's now the most followed American man on Instagram. So I think the words he's looking for are, thank you, Dana.
Yeah, The Rock didn't want to be on social media, and I said, you're crazy. I said, do you know how big you'll be on social media? And I kind of explained it to him from a business perspective on why he should do it. And I actually set him up with my social media team, and they got him started and got him going. And, I mean, the guy is an absolute juggernaut now on social media. So, yeah.
Is social media, I mean, you've got kids, I've got kids. Social media has a lot of good stuff about it, there's no question. Has some bad stuff. It can be pretty toxic. A lot of kids suffer from anxiety from the stuff that exists on social media. What do you think on the balance sheet? Is it a force for good or not?
Yeah, I think there's a lot of negative things in this world that if you focus on that type of stuff, and if you're not tough enough, and if you're not hard enough for it, let me tell you what, if your feelings get hurt easily, you should stay as far away from social media as possible, okay?
I totally agree.
But social media is one of the greatest marketing tools of all time, right? And what you have to understand is you have to embrace the negativity too. The negative, you can't just have, you're never going to be in a scenario anywhere in life where everything is positive. Oh, everybody loves me and everybody's saying great things about all the things that I do. It's impossible. So if that is even your mindset, you're way too soft for probably a lot of things. But to say that social media is bad, it's the same thing that they said about us when we were younger, that television was horrible for you. Oh my God, if you watch television, this and that and everything. Listen, there's a lot of bad things out there in the world. If you are soft and if you are a total wimp, you know, forget about it. Everything's going to bother you, everything's going to hurt your feelings, and everything's going to give you anxiety.
Where do you sit on this?
Lock yourself up in a closet somewhere and hide from the whole world.
Do you know what, Dana? It's so refreshing to hear this because so few public figures will actually say this stuff anymore because they get terrified the woke brigade is going to cancel them for saying things which are so obviously true. And it's refreshing.
Yeah.
Whenever I hear you speak, I think this guy just says what he thinks. And by the way, I agree with most of what you say.
Yeah, so social media is the greatest marketing tool in the world. If you own a business or you're aspiring to do something, and get your image, your product, your whatever it is out there, you're insane not to be on social media. But don't go on social media and thinking that it's going to... Here's the other thing that you have to understand, too, about the negativity on social media. If you're out there looking to promote something, you have to embrace the negativity because the negative people are so loony, they're so batshit nuts that these people will stay on there all day fighting with everybody to make it, and it kicks you up into the algorithm and actually makes your post act more popular. You know, this is what a lot of these big corporations don't understand. Like these big corporations we want to get into social media and everything else. Well, you better get ready for some negativity. Yeah. But most of them can't handle negativity, so they try to stay away from it. We live in a hard world. People are mean, and people say mean things, and people do mean things. That's been that way since the beginning of time, and it's never going to change. So either toughen up or go hide somewhere. Just get out of the way.
We're in a very strange place at the moment in sport where biological males are beginning to dominate biological females in women's sport because they identify as women. What do you think of that?
I think you know exactly what I think of that. I think that, you know, let me put it to you this way. I have a daughter, okay? And you know, I don't ever want to see a day where somebody who is a biological male is competing against my daughter. So, yeah, no, I think it's another nutty, you know, insane thing that's happening in the world today, you know, that we're all trying to deal with. And yeah, I'm just glad there's my daughter's a cheerleader, so she's not playing any competitive sports, but you know, it hasn't happened in the cheer world yet.
If your daughter wanted to be a fighter, what would you feel about that? Because you put on some very, very big fights involving women. I got to be honest, I never feel that comfortable watching women smacking seven bells out of each other. I know it's hugely popular. I know they love doing it. I know that some of them become superstars and make tons of money. But as the father of an 11-year-old girl myself, I would never want to see her do it. How do you feel about if your daughter wanted to?
I famously got hammered like 10 years ago saying women would never fight in the UFC. And then I met Ronda Rousey. And
I met her on a plane.
She changed my whole...
I met her on a plane and she was...
Oh, you did?
She looked dangerous from about 5 rows away.
Did you talk to her?
I just said hello, but she was... I mean, she had an intimidating aura. And I thought, yeah, I mean, she's someone that clearly revels in that sport, revels in fighting.
Yeah.
And why should I be a sexist pig and think that women shouldn't be able to do what men do?
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. And I had the same thing. But you have to understand the context. At the time, I was trying to get people to accept men fighting in a cage. Women fighting in a cage, I was like, oh my God, this will be next to impossible. But if you look at what we did, almost everything was impossible in building this business to what we built it to today. But what I did learn is that I never expected these women to be as technical and as badass as they have been. And the answer to that question is yes. If my daughter wanted to fight, I would absolutely let her fight. I wouldn't stop my daughter from doing anything or competing in anything that she wanted to do. I would actually be very supportive and help in any way that I possibly could.
Who is the greatest fighter of any kind you've ever seen?
Of any time, in any sport?
Any time, any sport?
It's so hard to put your thumb on it because I think it's
well, let me make it an easy
subjective.
question. I'll make it an easy question. If you could choose one person in history, say modern history, last 100 years, to fight literally for your life, who would it be?
Oh, God. You know, I'm a big Ali fan. He was so iconic, and he changed so many things in the world and culture and you know, as far as racism and so many different things go. Ali was such a massive figure in life, you know, not just boxing. Was he the greatest ever? He's one of the greatest humans ever. That's a fact.
But that's not the question.
As far as
he did lose 3 times.
I know. You got me on this one. I mean, John Jones, who's in the UFC still, has never been beat.
I know.
This guy has beat everybody. And when you talk about real fighting, you know, when you talk about who the baddest man is on the planet is, when you talk about that, the real definition of what that means, you throw 2 guys in a room and who comes out?
Yeah.
Okay? That's the baddest man on the planet. And it is hard to not say that John Jones is that guy right now.
I'll tell you who I would take. I would take Tyson before he went into prison. Mike Tyson. I thought for those
100%, but
for those 3
Tyson
years.
doesn't know the ground game. Tyson can't grapple. Tyson's hanging over here. His quote is on the wall over here. Nobody loves Mike Tyson more than I do, believe me. But when you talk about putting 2 guys in a room, who comes out? John Jones has the tools to beat everybody.
I want to come back and just finally talk to you about your health, because you've had some pretty big health scares, and a guy called Gary Brecker, who's going to join you, has pretty much, I think you would say, helped save your life. And we're going to talk about how that's happened and why it had to happen. So we've been joined now by Gary Brecker. I think the easiest thing, Dana, explain to the audience who Gary is and why he's so important to you.
Yeah, so Gary Brecker is a human biologist, and I met him through a longtime friend of mine. And basically, when you go see a doctor about your general health, they want to put you on pills. And at the time that I met him, I was on 3 different medications. And, you know, basically when you look at these different meds, each one of them have, you know, 10 side effects. And I was dealing with 3 different doctors at the time, and they couldn't tell me anything. They couldn't fix what was wrong with my legs. They couldn't really keep my blood pressure under control. They couldn't keep my cholesterol under control. My triglycerides were off the charts. I mean, your show isn't long enough for me to walk you through the laundry list of things that were wrong with me. So I ended up finding out that he was a mortality expert. So he could tell you when you were going to die, and he would be right within a month or so. I became obsessed with this. So that was all I cared about. I didn't want all the, I didn't believe, I used to call this hippie shit. This is all hippie shit, I don't believe in it. And, you know, I meet the guy, he does my blood work, and he lives in Miami, I live in Vegas. So he keeps calling me saying, you know, I want to come out and walk through your blood work. I said, yeah, I don't care about walking through my blood work. When am I going to die? So he finally talks me into coming out, and he starts going through my blood work, and he starts telling me everything that's wrong with me with no medical history whatsoever on me. So this is kind of blowing me away. Then he told me what was wrong with my parents, and he was right. So basically,
wow.
he ended up getting me, and he says to me, give me 10 weeks, I promise I'll change your life. So I said, all right, I'll commit 10 weeks to this thing. And to say that this guy has changed my life is the understatement of the century. I mean, as I got to the 10-week point, I started to feel like I was in my 30s again. And now I've been with him a year and a half, and I'm not kidding you, I feel like I'm in my 20s. my level of productivity at work, my cognitive, my physical, I mean, just everything. This guy is a genius, and I tell everybody, you start to get the stuff we were talking about social media. This guy's a scam artist, he's scamming you, this and that. Numbers don't lie. This guy has taken my blood work from absolutely horrible to the best it's ever been in my life. Even my doctors agree with it, and he's brilliant. If this guy called me and told me to squirt hot sauce in my eyes, I'd do it.
Well, before I come to Gary, just quickly, how long did he say you had to live if he hadn't changed things?
He gave me 10.4 years. And
wow.
what's crazy about that is he gave me he said, if you stay on this trajectory that you're on, you're going to live another 10.4 years. And me and my wife both disagree with him. I actually think I wouldn't have made it 10.4 years if I hadn't met him. That's how different I feel compared to where I was. And, when you think of these things, the other big problem for me was sleep apnea and snoring. It was horrible. I couldn't sleep through the night. And you go see a doctor, and what do they tell you to do? Yeah, put this mask on with this machine, and you know what I mean? I don't snore, and I don't have sleep apnea anymore. He's cured everything that was wrong with me.
Let me bring in Gary. So, Gary, I mean, that's one of the great marketing pitches I've heard. In a very short...
Yeah, it absolutely is.
Right, in a short nutshell, what have you done to Dana to make him so enthusiastic and to, in his eyes, prolong his life?
So Dana had a common precursor for cardiovascular disease called metabolic syndrome. It's actually the leading cause of cardiovascular disease, which is the leading cause of death worldwide. And it's a combination of 5 things: abdominal obesity, low healthy cholesterol, low HDL cholesterol, elevated insulin and blood sugar, elevated cholesterol, and hypertension. And to have any 2 of those 5 is considered to have you're considered to have metabolic syndrome. It's something you should get addressed. That's why I think everybody should get data on their bodies. He had 5 of 5. He had triglycerides through the roof. He had abdominal obesity. He had low healthy levels of cholesterol. He was hyperinsulinemic, meaning his insulin was very high, and he was pre-diabetic. And so, as much of a disaster as that sounds like, all of those things meet at a common hub of lifestyle and diet and supplementation. And, a lot of people talk about the expense that you have to go through to fix that. It wasn't that it was expensive. It would have been expensive if he had not fixed it. But over the course of just 10 weeks, we lowered his triglycerides back into the normal range. And we're talking about triglyceride levels that were 8 times the normal level. Back into the normal range, he started exercising again. He went on a keto reset diet. The majority of what Dana did was really what Dana did himself. I mean, there are people listening to this show right now that because they don't have abdominal obesity think that they can escape metabolic syndrome, and that's patently false. Everybody that's listening to this show right now, you should go to your doctor and get that data. Ask your doctor about metabolic syndrome, and if they don't know what metabolic syndrome is, get a new doctor.
And what were the key things, just quickly, Gary, what were the key things that Dana changed in terms of diet, which made a big difference?
So we did 3 big things with Dana. We did hormone balance, we did nutrient deficiencies, and we did glycemic control. It controls blood sugar. So he went on a strict keto reset diet, which is a very strict, I call it a prescription keto diet, meaning you have to eat exactly what is on this plan, morning, noon, and night, for 10 weeks, or this situation could get a whole lot worse. So he went on a strict keto diet. He had a strict exercise and workout routine. We also started to use modalities that you can access for free in nature, but he actually bought equipment. He bought a PEMF mat. He bought an oxygen, it's called Hypermax, where he breathes oxygen for 10 to 12 minutes a day while he mildly exercises. And he bought a red light bed. And before everybody jumps on me for saying that you have to buy all this expensive equipment, you can get the same effect by taking your shoes off and grounding on the surface of the earth, learning to do breath work, and exposing your skin to sunlight. So he did magnetism, oxygen, and light with a PMF mat, oxygen, and a red light bed. And he went on a strict 10-week keto reset diet.
It's fascinating. I've got to unfortunately wrap it up. It is fascinating. I don't know whether to see you or not, Gary, because what I don't want to hear is you look at me and go, Piers, unfortunately, you're leaving us next Tuesday.
I can fix that. And, we'll push it out a couple thousand Tuesdays.
Dana, it's been brilliant. Honestly, I've had such a fascinating time going over your life, your extraordinary career, your amazing achievement with UFC. My sons, I started with this, I'm going to end it. They're all massive UFC fans. They're all very excited about this interview. The first question they're going to ask is, Dad, how did you do? Did Dana think you were any good? That's all they'll care about. So what's the verdict?
Incredible. Great interview. It was a pleasure. And tell your boys thank you. I really appreciate the support.
Actually, what they really want to hear, Dana, is can they have tickets to your next fight?
Is what? Yeah, they're invited to any fights they ever want to come to. Anywhere in the world, you just let me know, and I got them.
Well, it's very kind. You're going to wish you'd never said those words, but they will be jumping off the sofa listening to that. Dana White, you're a phenomenon. The FT piece I referenced earlier, the Financial Times, they summed up your great talent like this. They said he can transfer his immense excitement to others with almost no loss of energy. It's the greatest thing to watch in the world. To him, he's not manipulating you. He's just an enthusiast. You're one of life's enthusiasts, which, given where you came from and the hardship you overcame and the lack of love from your parents, is a pretty amazing achievement. So I congratulate you.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
How would you like to be remembered? If you could write your own tombstone, what would you say?
I said it many times. We talked about it here today. The only thing I care about is how my kids remember me and what they think when I'm gone. All this other stuff means nothing to me. I'm very fortunate that I get to do what I love to do every day, and I still am very passionate about it. But at the end of the day, it's all about how I was as a father and what my kids think.
I couldn't agree more. Dana White, what a pleasure. Thank you very much indeed.
Likewise. Thank you.
Which they certainly do.
But there are almost no women who rape men, for example. So that is an asymmetry there in sexual violence.
Well, yes, there's an asymmetry in all sorts of places, but that doesn't mean that Western culture is a male-dominated patriarchy. The fact that there are asymmetries has nothing to do with your basic argument.
No, but you might
This is a trope that people just accept. Western society is a male-dominated patriarchy. It's like, no, it's not. That's not true. And even if it has a patriarchal structure to some degree, the basis of that structure is not power, it's competence. That's why our society works. It's only when a structure degenerates into tyranny that the fundamental relationships between people become dependent on power. It's not power. If you hire a plumber who's likely to be male, it's not because there's roving bands of tyrannical plumbers forcing you to make that choice. And it's the case with almost every interaction that you have at the face of our culture. You're dealing with people who are offering a service of one form or another, who are usually part of the broad middle class, and who offer, and what you're looking for is the person who can offer the best service, and you can find it. It's not a consequence of being dominated by anything that's tyrannical. And then again, our culture, our Western culture, which is by no means perfect, and certainly has tyrannical elements like all cultures do, is the least tyrannical society that's ever been produced, and certainly the least tyrannical society that exists now. So where's the patriarchy exactly in all of this?
Well, saying that it's the least tyrannical society is not the same as saying it's not a tyrannical society.
That's exactly why I said it was the least tyrannical
But that's
society.
what I mean. So you haven't debunked the existence of patriarchy then. You've said that actually now is better
I don't
for
have to debunk it.
women.
You have to demonstrate its existence.
Okay, well, let's go through it. I'm writing a book about feminism in the moment. Until 1919, there were professions that women were barred from. They simply were not allowed to do it. Until 1880s.
Why would you blame men for that?
Because who was in those professions, who was guarding entry to those professions,
What
who
do you
was
think-
worried
what
about
do you
losing their
think it was
status
that
if women became doctors?
What do you think it was that emancipated women in the 20th century, just out of curiosity?
Well, a couple of different things. I think it was technology. I think it was the pill helped enormously
Okay, so
because
when
it
did that-
gave
when
people...
was that developed?
Well, in the 60s.
Right, so that wasn't 1919.
No, but I also think
How
it was a
about
series
tampons?
of legal changes that started in Britain with the Married Women's Property Act, which said for the first time women are full legal beings under the law. They can own property. And that, to me, is a structure that has continued throughout, from a time when women didn't have the same legal rights as men to now when they mostly do, but culture still lags behind it. I don't think you and I are necessarily talking at such cross purposes. It's just that your conception of patriarchy, as I see it in the book, is that quite a lot of men are quite nice and they do nice things for women. And
No, that's not my conception of patriarchy.
Will you-
And I don't require men or advise them to be nice,
Well,
ever.
Well, you do talk about the guy who's the tampon king, the sanitary towel king of India,
I
right?
wouldn't call that nice.
Okay,
I'd
what
call
would you-
that brave.
Okay.
Did you read about his life when he was trying to develop that?
Yeah.
God, it was absolutely miserable, and he did it anyways. He
Right.
freed all sorts of women as a consequence.
And I think
That's
that was
not nice. That's courageous. That's noble. That's visionary. It's not nice.
I think it is also nice. I think it is also something that is, it is honouring your social obligations.
I'm not so sure that that's a social obligation, because many other people would have done it had it been a social obligation. He said what he was concerned about. He saw that his wife was suffering with her monthly period and had to choose between feeding her family and taking care of herself properly, and chose to feed her family and thought he would do something about that. That goes way past nice, especially given what he had to suffer through to do all the experimentation that produced his eventual technology. So, this whole patriarchy thing, I think you have no idea how pernicious and dangerous it is.
Well, no, I don't.
Men
I
and
really don't.
women
Go on.
throughout history have fundamentally cooperated to push back against the absolute catastrophe of existence. A terrible death rate, the probability of chronic starvation, early death, disease, the difficulty of raising children, with all the death that was associated with that. And to look backwards in time and say, well, basically what happened was men took the upper hand and persecuted women in this tyrannical patriarchy is an absolutely dreadful misreading of history. It's a terrible thing to teach young women, and it's a horrible thing to inflict upon men.
I mean, I absolutely disagree with you. I think that's like saying slavery in the US was actually, most people cooperate. Well, no, you didn't. You had a system where one set of people owned another set of people. And until women got full legal rights, they could own property for themselves, they could work. Essentially, they were owned. They were first owned by their fathers and then by their husbands.
Status to the domination by men.
Yeah.
You already said that you thought that what emancipated women primarily in the 20th century was technological revolution.
No, not
Okay,
primarily,
so
but that's one of two. I think that's
it's
two
not
things.
primarily, eh?
No,
you
I
don't think the pill was a primary force in the emancipation of women?
I think
or
it
the
was-
invention of tampons, let's say, or the provision of proper sanitary facilities, toilets, and that sort of thing. You're thinking instead it was the action of courageous feminists in the 1920s that produced a social revolution that overthrew the patriarchy. That's your theory.
Yeah, I think
That's a foolish theory.
Well, I'm very sorry to hear you say that, but I think, to quote you in the Kathy Newman interview, I think it's a multivariate, right? I think there are lots of different things that all contributed to
Well,
women
then
gaining
let's
full
not
rights.
be assuming that Western society was a tyrannical patriarchy.
Well, no, but that's
then,
one
as our
of them,
fundamental
and then
assumption.
other things happened as well. So you have the pill, you have the dishwasher and white goods, labour-saving devices in the home. I think all of those were really important. But you also have things like campaigns for the vote.
Yes, you also have things like that, yes.
So how, when in a system that existed in England until 1918, when half...
Why would you even want to look at history like that? Like, what's your goal?
Because I think
Exactly.
the people who don't look at history are condemned to repeat it. And I think that we are...
What are we going to do? Repeat the persecution of women? You
Yeah.
think that's a realistic possibility?
Yeah, we're sitting
And
here...
How do you see that?
We're sitting
happening?
here in America, right, where we've just had a fifth judge appointed to the Supreme Court who is now anti-abortion, who's now conservative. I think that abortion rights are absolutely fundamental to women being able to function as full humans in society, and I think that is now under threat in America. I think it is extremely smug and complacent to think civilization has peaked, it's all upwards from here.
Yeah, well, good luck with that, I suppose.
It's a living. There are lots of people who agree with me, there are lots of people clearly who agree with you. I wanted to...
No, there are just a lot of people, I would say, who are coming to listen to what I say because they're sick and tired of having their desire to move forward in the world and to achieve something and to take their place as adult males, let's say, who are under the weight of accusations that their ambition and forthrightness is a manifestation of something that's fundamentally tyrannical. They're not happy with that. It's not doing anyone any good, and it's also not true. It's really a terrible thing to do to young men, and it's happening all the time. That's why they're bailing out of universities like mad. There won't be a man left in the social sciences in 10 years in the universities, and it's no bloody wonder. It's an unhospitable place, and it's unhospitable precisely because of this doctrine. It said that throughout history, the fundamental relationship between men and women was one of power, essentially slavery. It's like, fine, believe it if you want. It's not going to do your relationships any good, I can tell you that. So.
Okay, well, we'll see how that one goes. I'm currently married, but I'll raise it with him. I think the universities example is a really fascinating one because you talk in the book about the fact that now women are a majority on 2/3 of college courses in the US. And I've also seen you saying, well, you believe in equality of opportunity but not equality of outcome. maybe
It
women...
isn't only that I don't believe in equality of outcome, I think it's an unbelievably pathological wish and doctrine.
Right,
and it's
but
very
okay.
dangerous. History has demonstrated exactly how dangerous it is. Equality of opportunity is something that anyone with any sense would support, but equality of outcome, it's...
So what's your problem with there not being...
You have to be confused beyond belief to support equality of outcome.
Okay, so what's your problem with there not being enough men in the social sciences? Perhaps women are just cleverer. Perhaps that's why there are more women at university, right?
be.
Under your doctrine. I don't think that, but that's
Well, I think
the logical
problem
extension
I
of your
have with it
doctrine.
isn't the fact that there's an unequal distribution. The problem I have with it is that the reason that men are bailing out is because of the prevalence of the doctrine that you're espousing. That's the problem I have with it. It doesn't matter that much. They will bail out. I don't see any way that the universities are going to redeem themselves in the next decade. So, and maybe that will be fine, but I doubt it. We'll see.
That seems extremely pessimistic when the numbers of people going to university just generally are going up.
Yeah, well, that's not going to last for very long.
Why not?
Because it's too expensive, and the universities are doing all sorts of things that aren't acceptable. Mostly racking up the price, ratcheting up the price. So, and decreasing the quality of what they're offering, and playing into the hands of the people who are ideological acolytes of the identity politics routines, and playing postmodern stunts, and pushing neo-Marxism and all these things that are characteristic of the social sciences and the humanities primarily.
See, this is where I find you fascinating to me, because you talk in these quite apocalyptic terms. I think that someone who will listen to that and think, wow, there's a really big problem. But what we're really talking about is some irritatingly postmodern professors and some students with blue hair and funny ideas about gender in a handful of courses around America and
If that's what we were
Western Europe.
talking about, no one would have paid attention to me for more than about 15 minutes. So you might see this as some surface manifestation that's irrelevant, but that isn't how most people view it. It's certainly the case, too, that this identity politics battle of ideas was a determining factor in the last American election. If Hillary wouldn't have played identity politics, played cozy with the identity politics type, she would have kept the working class and she would be president now. So these aren't trivial issues by any stretch of the imagination. It's not just some kids having a decent time while they're being creatively rebellious at university. It's a much deeper problem than that. The doctrines that I'm opposed to are predicated on, well, one assumption they're predicated on, it's probably the primary assumption, is that the best way to view history is as the domination of a tyrannical male patriarchy, and that's true also particularly of the West, which is a doctrine I find absolutely unpalatable and historically absurd, biologically ridiculous, and ungrateful, among other things.
Who's ungrateful, sorry, in that? Who is being ungrateful?
Look at what you have.
Right.
You live in the best society that's ever been created. I was reading about some Indonesians.
Hang on, do you mean me as a woman or me as a
I mean
21st
us.
century person in the world?
I mean us, yeah.
I mean, I'm
You,
incredibly grateful for what I have, but to me the
Then how
project
is
of
it a
politics is...
construction of a tyrannical patriarchy? You're grateful for the productions of a tyrannical patriarchy. How does that make sense?
Because I think life is good. I think it could be better. That's what being
fine.
a progressive
That's a perfectly
means.
reasonable proposition.
But I guess
that isn't commensurate with your claim that you're the beneficiary of a tyrannical patriarchy.
Why not?
How can it be good if it's the consequence of a tyrannical patriarchy? Tyranny isn't good, is it? I mean, that's the definition of tyranny. Something that isn't good, and yet it's produced all these things that you're grateful for. Like, doesn't that contradiction bother you? Where did what was good come from?
I think I'm benefiting actually from a lot of things that I don't support, that are unearned privileges in my life. I think that's absolutely true.
Like your job?
Like I have a very good job. I had a loving family.
Quit.
Well, I don't think that's going to do the world any good, is it?
That's a hell of a fine rationalization for your privileged position.
Oh well, fair enough. But if
you could trade it off with someone who's less privileged.
I could.
That'd be a start.
I could do that, but I don't want to, and I won't, and I don't think
Why
I should be
not?
expected to.
Why not? Is it okay for you to occupy a position of privilege in the patriarchal tyranny? And if it is it because you're female, or is it just because it's convenient?
Let me tell you my political philosophy. I guess I'm a social democrat. So what I believe is that you should, if you have a good life, you should try and pass that on. I believe in a progressive redistributive tax system, for example. It was once said by Lord Mandelson in British politics, New Labour was okay with people being filthy rich as long as they paid their taxes. Now, I'm kind of less okay with people being filthy rich. But what I
Define
do,
filthy rich.
well, I think I would leave that
You're
to...
probably in the top 1/10 of 1% of people who've ever lived on the planet. that would constitute filthy rich by historical standards.
Okay, but I'm not
So
sure that I'm
where is
going
the
to
line exactly?
be able to help the Neanderthals at this point, really, by giving up some money. But this is my point, is that what I believe is, I believe in a structure in which people who have had a good life and had lots of advantages should pay that back, pay that forwards, which I think is the message that you preach as well, right? You have responsibilities. And if you've had, like us, a lot of advantages in life.
Civilization as a tyrannical patriarchy.
But it's not purely a tyrannical
That's
patriarchy,
for sure.
is it?
It's purely not.
Right.
And that's exactly the issue.
But why
Because
would you
when
deal with moral
describe it as a
absolutes anyway?
tyrannical patriarchy, then you make a case that it's purely that. And that's exactly what's ungrateful.
Why
It's
is-
not purely that at all.
Why
It
is
has
saying
its
that something
corrupt
has elements of this made
That
the
isn't
same
what's
as it
being
is
said.
purely that?
That isn't what's being said. Merely to define it as a patriarchy implies unidimensionality. And to insist that that's also tyrannical doesn't offer a balanced viewpoint at all.
Well, I think that's
So-
probably where, I think that's probably where your disagreement comes with this, which is because I do not see it in that way. I do not see that as univariate at all. I see it as one
Then
element
why
of
call
many.
it a patriarchy?
Because it describes an overarching structure.
Does it?
Yeah.
What if the patriarchy is fundamentally composed of women? Is it still a patriarchy?
No, that would be a matriarchy.
Would it? So let's say we take a patriarchal structure, like
Yeah.
the medical profession, and we fill it primarily with women. Is it then a matriarchal structure? What makes it a patriarchy to begin with? Is it the hierarchical structure? Is it the fact that it's mostly men? Is it the sociological structure, or is it the fact that it's mostly men?
Well, I think that's really interesting because male primary school teachers, for example, only 15% of them are men. And I interviewed some of them for my book. And you know what? They report exactly the same things that women do in male-dominated offices, right? They say, people have conversations that I feel excluded from. I feel stigmatized, like I shouldn't be here. People look at me askance when I say I'm a primary school teacher and I'm a man. You know, they kind of reel back. We all make those implicit associations. So,
And so if it is a structure that's dominated by women, then it's also a tyrannical patriarchy.
I think in that case, then men have a way of, they should be able to complain about the fact that a very female-dominated office leaves them feeling out too. Yeah, feeling left out
So
too.
how do we get something that isn't a tyrannical patriarchy? If it's composed of women, and it's a tyrannical patriarchy, and if it's composed of men, it's a tyrannical patriarchy. We're kind of out of options.
Right, but, well, or you could have an office in which a blend of people of both.
It's just beautiful.
Oh my god. This is the craziest circular saw I've ever seen. Go on.
So the guys in Christchurch got the other one, the twin of this one. So they took Olga,
Yeah.
and this is Magdalena. So yeah, that's
That's the name of my architect. So in New Zealand, it's pretty difficult to get most things. And therefore, when you go to tool stores, you just have the generic tools, drills, drop saws, things like that, basic hand saws. So it wasn't until about 6 or 7 years ago when I met Gaston that I got some specialty hand tools. Oh, it's always a good sight, Gaston.
yeah.
Looking in the back of your van. Japanese tools, German tools, Swedish tools, beautiful tools that they just don't stock in shops here. So back in the first year of the channel, people were asking me where I got my Japanese hand saws from. So I called Gaston up, asked if he was keen to make a little video, and we've been making them ever since. Hey, it works.
Yeah. I tried to polish it as much as I could. I'm replacing that because that's faded. So
Oh.
I'm gonna put one that actually comes. I mean, it works, but yeah, the color
Okay.
not good. I know. Man, I love your shop. It's looking so tidy now.
It is, eh? How many coffees have you had so far, Gaston?
3.
Already?
Yeah.
It's only like 10.
Yeah, I know. I know, but I need 2 to just start, and then I had another one when I dropped the kids at school, and I might need another one soon.
It's like Christmas when Gaston comes around, honestly. Is this a pocket hole jig?
New tools that some of them have been in the website for a while, but I mean, again, we never show them. We don't need to go into really deep detail, but we can do like an overview, otherwise it will be like too much, you know?
Too much, yeah.
So-
Well, you got to give people a reason to go to the website.
Yeah, as well, but I mean, also otherwise we can stay here for a
But-
week. This saw has been in the market, not in New Zealand mainly, but around the world for quite a few years.
Yeah.
And I think the only straight competition with this one will be the one from Festool that doesn't do compound. So as you know, when we are, doing a renovation or even a new build, and sometimes the rooms are not square, you have an option, this saw, unlock it there. So obviously sliding, pretty much similar to any other drop saws that we have in the market, what you can do is you can move fences.
Oh my God,
and they move on, obviously on, it's symmetrical.
And it goes back the other way as well.
Yeah, so you measure angle on the corner, and then you can transfer this to the table.
Oh, yeah.
And then when you're happy with the angle, you just measure. You lock this, and you can make your cut. The model is KGSV72 exact, symmetric. Cracky.
Luckily, I have a offcut of skirting kind of board right here.
It's gonna get dirty.
Are you okay about that?
Okay.
So how do I do like the angle thing though?
Oh, cracky. Okay.
You're making my workshop very dirty.
You realize that actually you made the first 2 cuts with this saw.
Oh, really?
I haven't used it yet.
Oh, do you want to do this cut?
No, that's okay.
How do you feel?
That's all right. We'll clean it up later.
You're going to be polishing it tonight, aren't you?
Oh, yeah, well, maybe over the weekend. I should leave it to stop, but yeah, I couldn't wait.
Was it fun?
Yeah, it was actually really calm. It's so smooth.
Yeah, like that. Wow.
The most important thing and feature on this saw is the time you save, copy an angle, and transfer that angle onto the saw. This is one of our suppliers in Germany, Easy Emmerich. They make amazing hand tools, and there is a third party, it's another company that makes these boxes. It comes with a support that you can screw, you can attach to the wall, and then you can hang up your box. And then when you want to go to work, you just pick it up and take it with you. You just unlock this.
Oh my God.
My leg.
Jeez.
Some of them. This is just a little bit. So
Japan's worst streamers get knocked out.
Somali, one of the internet's biggest embarrassments, is at it again, and good Lord, I hate to say it, but some people truly never learn. Not only did he get smacked up once, but now twice in 2 weeks. I was actually planning on doing a video on the first time he got put in his place. However, I got a little bit busy with life stuff, and
Why's he got a fucking banner? It's got Shroud at 0 viewers. Bro, this putting Shroud at the fucking... Yeah, what the hell? What happened to Shroud? God damn.
couldn't get to it. And I'll be honest with y'all, the second time he got smacked is much funnier than the first one. But, you know, since we're here already, you know, roll the clip. Let's go ahead and see it.
Mm-hmm.
I like how bro is wearing...
Bro, Super Mario stepped up. Holy shit. Boom, bitch.
I like how bro is wearing a Luffy straw hat, and he is doing the exact opposite of what everything Luffy stands for. Like, I want y'all to understand, like, what kind of creature we're dealing with here. He is going around calling himself Monkey D. Monkey. Do you guys seriously think that you can reason with a black man calling himself Monkey? I know Luffy's name is Monkey D. Luffy, but Monkey D. Monkey, like, why did you need to emphasize the monkey? What's your issue?
This seems like just somebody who's trying to be as edgy and obnoxious as possible for viewership. Like, I think that's really what he's doing. Like, he's just trying to get as much attention on him and everything like that, right? Trying to just be obnoxious as fuck for whatever reason.
Why? Why? You're making us look bad, pal. Man, you know what? Not even a race thing. You're making yourself look bad. You're responsible for yourself. Nobody's cleaning up after you. People are just going to keep manhandling you because you're a 5'3" little shit. You're a pussy. I said you're a pussy. And I got to catch up a little bit on the lore for the most recent stuff to make sense.
God.
But long story short,
he's not
he is
bathroom because they were right.
Okay. Hey, whatever. I don't know what's going on. Yeah, man. Just don't camera. All you have to say don't grab nothing. Oh.
Damn. Damn.
Anonymous sent $3. Hiroshima, Nagasaki, Hiroshima, Nagasaki, Hiroshima, Nagasaki, Hiroshima, Nagasaki, Hiroshima, Nagasaki.
Whitney Cummings is technically one of the biggest comedians in the LA comedy scene. She has a huge YouTube channel. She is part of the well-oiled The Hollywood Machine and is close friends with Joe Rogan. And although her YouTube channel is only about 4 years old, she has over 65 million total channel views, has stand-up clips with millions and millions of views each, and has had some of the biggest comedians on her podcast. However, lately her YouTube channel has been suffering, and her last comedy special was a tough watch. So today, we'll be taking a look at some of the most intense and awkward moments that have actually contributed to her downfall, from the legendary fight between her and Tim Dillon a few years ago, and also, most recently, her breaking down while talking about Chris D'Elia. So, let's get started.
What do you think this is? This is a real production.
I know, but why?
Why?
You know, you don't need all these people, and I don't want to take any of their jobs away because they're all working very hard. They're all on their phone and everything, and I know how hard they all work and how essential they all are.
It's called fake business.
Yeah, it's exactly what it is called.
But what happened? Because we are so on the same page all the time. We had like a real fight. Like we both went into our inner child.
I think, I think the only thing I said that was even slightly, was I said, it's not Two Broke Girls, it's a podcast. And you got very angry at that. It was such a light touch of a thing. And you got very angry.
I lost my temper. It doesn't happen a lot.
And I was just, it was a fun little thing to say.
But it wasn't like, because it fascinates me when comedians, because we're so rough with each other, when you go too far.
And to better understand this argument, we need to look at it from two different perspectives. Obviously, on one hand, Whitney Cummings is a perfect example of a comedian that went full Hollywood and has had pretty good success in it. And Tim Dillon, on the other hand, is a complete opposite. The dude was grinding it out, and it wasn't until Joe Rogan started shouting out his internet show that he actually had his big break and then started coming on the Joe Rogan Experience and killing it. And for some reason, Whitney doesn't really like that.
Like when someone crosses
I didn't know that
the
was
line.
good. There's always going to be this unspoken thing between old Hollywood and young Hollywood. And that's what's happening here.
And I'm old Hollywood.
Yeah, you're a legend.
By the way, you're not any Hollywood. You're young internet.
Young Hollywood.
You've never been Hollywood.
But that is Hollywood.
No, it's young internet.
No, but that is
Hollywood still exists.
No, no one cares about your friends like Sandra Bullock. No one cares about them.
The thing where she wore the blindfold in the canoe got 50 million
what
views
was that,
more than
4 years ago?
I'm just saying.
Bird Box? You're bringing up Bird Box? The horror movie on Netflix? I mean, this is what you're...
But here's the difference. Here's what...
What about Perfect Strangers? That was fun, too. You want this to be a Sunset Boulevard where you're at the top of a stairwell and you're like, with one look, I'll do a multicam. I understand that.
The reason I need you to come early is because we shoot this on film.
Yeah, well, it's beautiful. And I respect that. We all know that you put a lot into everything you do.
Now, this is when the conversation starts going south, and to be fair, both have pretty good points. For example, if Whitney has the money and has the connections to bring people in, to do everything and handle the entire production for her, then do it. But we all know that you don't really need all that. What you really need is good content and to be somewhat entertaining. And that's what Tim Dillon was hinting at, but he didn't say it out directly, because 2 years later, that's exactly what happened to Whitney. She didn't change her mindset, she didn't innovate, and her channel has lost a lot of traction. On the other hand, Tim Dillon has been killing it, and at some point was had the top Patreon out there. Now Shane Gillis has passed him and is the #1 Patreon on the website, which is a better example because he doesn't even put a lot of production on his podcast on YouTube, and he's completely killing it, mostly from Joe Rogan, but also having great content on YouTube for free.
And I respect that.
I try too hard with the podcast.
You put a lot into it, and that's
Too much.
That's okay.
I overthink it.
Yeah, maybe. I don't know.
I don't even know if I'm good at podcasting. That's the other thing.
I think you are, but it's a very different thing. Like, you have celebrities on, and you prepare, and you do all this stuff, and I respect that. But it's like what we do is just a little different.
Because I'm insecure, Tim. I don't have the white man thing of I'm just like, who wouldn't want to hear me talk for 3 hours about anything? Like, I'm not allowed to be boring. I have to be twice as good to get half as much respect.
Okay.
You disagree?
Maybe.
Well, how so?
I don't know. You have to be twice as good.
I mean, I just
to get half as much respect.
I mean, think about it. I was thinking about this the other day because I was like, how long am I going to do this podcast? Is there any proof in history that people want to listen to women talk
Well,
for
if they
3
don't,
hours
is
a
it
week?
always their fault? Is it always the people's fault?
Has there
Don't
ever
wanna
been a
listen?
famous female radio host? Terry Gross? Like, who?
Big
Joe
DJs,
Rogan.
people like Angie Martinez on Hot 97.
Yeah,
There are people.
Downtown Julie Brown.
Yeah,
Kennedy.
Yeah, they're people.
But we're digging.
Yeah, but who? I'm trying to assign blame for that. I can't assign blame.
Obviously, Tim's reaction says it all, and the fact that Whitney wants to take it there is so wild to me, especially since she's one of the richest female comedians out in LA. And also, that's a horrible take because there's a lot of people out there like Angie Martinez, Alex Cooper from the Call Her Daddy podcast, who signed a $60 million Spotify exclusive deal. And even in places like Mexico and South America, some of the biggest comedians are females, are women. But because Whitney was one of the many that actually benefited from Joe Rogan's massive audience, now that she hasn't really come out with new stuff, she thinks that it's their fault and not hers.
I'm just going to start by saying, you know, there's an obsession with female comedians right now. There's always kind of been one. We always joke we're the most hated species of human on the planet because, you know, it's like, you know, we have the audacity to go on stage and the courage to go on stage and say, I'm a piece of shit. You know, it's like I'm a piece of shit in the center of the universe, and we charge people money to hear us talk for 2 hours with no chance of having sex with us at the end. But, you know,
fans only.
You know, I entered into this with a very clear idea of knowing, like, I'm going to be hated by a lot of people for reasons that have nothing to do with me, and I'm going to be loved by a lot of people for
For doing this part?
No, just being a female comedian in general. It's a lot of like,
right.
because I have imposter syndrome too. If you guys are like, how dare you think you do, I'm the same way. I'm like, I don't, like, how dare I?
For example, that clip was from one of her most recent episodes, and she still repeats the idea that nobody wants to listen to a woman talk that they can't sleep with. And goes on to say that female comedians are the most hated people in the world, which is crazy. Not only that, but she is still in denial by thinking that social media or YouTube doesn't help comedians at all. Even going as far as telling Bert Kreischer to his face, Bert Kreischer, a comedian that has a video with over 60 million views and basically blew up over a single story on the Joe Rogan Experience. He tells him that the reason why he is where he is at now is not because of social media or YouTube. No, it's because he did morning radio in small towns. What?
Because I'm now, you know, you've been, you know, you've inspired me so much with how hard you worked on the road. Everything you have built has been from you touring. When people say, oh, he's selling out, we made the jokes on the road, you sell at the Smoothie King Arena when you go into your hot tub. Bullshit. It's a joke, it's funny, but Bert has been going back to these towns every year for 20 years. That's why they come back. And they go, 2 people came 15 years ago, and they went, that was hilarious. Next year, I'm going to do a double date, 2 friends. And then you kill again when you come back. And then next year, they go, I'm going to bring my office party. And the next year, they go, holy shit, let's bring our family reunion. Your social media is brilliant and great. It does get people to know you're there, but that's not why they're buying tickets. It's because you have already done that market so many times, and the word of mouth in that market. It's not why.
And you'll find that
you did radio in those markets.
I did radio in those markets.
15 years.
There's
Okay, so a couple of things to unpack here. First of all, Bert and Whitney were some of the few comedians that actually came out and spoke out against Chris D'Elia when the whole thing went down. So it makes sense that maybe Whitney thought that she would get a good reaction from Bert by telling him that, and that they would be on the same page when it came to D'Elia, but the exact opposite happened.
I see.
You know what?
So funny
Also,
when you talk about that couple incidents in my life.
The reason I'm interrupting is because I'm going to lose the bravery to say this.
Go.
Which is I had to publicly come out against one of my best friends about something horrific. Not one person stood behind me in the comedy community. Not one, especially women, because they don't want me to succeed, and they would have rather me embarrass myself and get destroyed and be wrong than support the thing they had all pretended they were fighting for, than me win. I took a huge ding. It emotionally broke me. For everyone who asks what happened to Whitney during the pandemic, that's what happened. I did the right thing, and no one stood with me. I did the bravest thing. I know that now, and it broke me.
For the entire time, Bert did not say a word. They didn't show his face on camera, and it wasn't until Whitney eventually pivoted and changed the conversation to a whole nother subject that he actually said something. This is probably because most recently he was on the Fighter and the Kid podcast and actually talked well about Chris D'Elia, saying that him and Brian Callen were some of the most funniest, they had some of the funniest clips out there. So it does make sense that Bert didn't want to touch the subject and didn't want to comment on it, essentially leaving Whitney Cummings out there by herself. By the way, if you're liking what you see so far, please hit the like button and subscribe to the channel. It helps out so much to push the videos to more people, and I really appreciate that. Thank you.
And that's okay. I didn't need anyone to. It was whatever. It was what it was. But I think that Anita Hill thing, when you go, maybe I'm not meant to be more successful in this. Maybe God, the universe doesn't want me to go past a certain point. So every time something knocks me down into my brain, I go, oh, this was such a roadblock, or this was an obstacle. But maybe I'm not. Maybe this is good enough. Maybe I don't need to be Kevin Hart with explosion. Maybe I just need to kind of. Maybe it's not healthy for me to be any more famous or something. Maybe it's unhealthy for me to be any more successful. Maybe it's too dangerous. Maybe it's whatever. But there's also.
Now, here's where things get a little bit weird, because not only does she think that her career suffered and she has a hard time just because she's a female, she's a woman, but also because she decided to stand up for what was right, and that nobody else, no other female comedians stood up with her on purpose to watch her essentially embarrass herself, which is not what happened. Sure, maybe it was a combination of that and also what happened in 2020 around the world, and the fact that some of her closest friends were being accused during the Me Too movement. All that essentially pushed her into this cycle of focusing on her image and sending the right message instead of focusing on her comedy. Because we have already talked about and reviewed her last comedy special in detail, and it was tough. And it's kind of similar to her other past comedy specials that are mostly all about either female to male relationships, sex, being a woman, dating, being sexy, and all that kind of stuff. So as time passes by and you grow older, I would assume that you would need to change it up a little bit. And hey, to be fair, when she's saying that her career took a hit after she stood up against D'Elia, it really means that she doesn't get to be a billionaire or have $500 million in the bank. But she is still in a way better place than like 95% of the population out there. So hearing her talking about making bad business decisions doesn't make me really feel that bad.
The first person ever to believe me to do stand-up was you. From the very jump, if you remember.
That's true.
Because I remember I was doing a speech at Ohio State for their national championship game, and I asked you because you did one at Penn. I think.
Oh yeah, I spoke at their graduation.
Yeah, and so I was like, man, I need some tips, and then I remember you helped me on that. And,
oh yeah.
And then you were like, and I remember we were driving somewhere, like, you're gonna be doing this. Like, whenever you decided you're gonna be doing this, you're gonna be performing for the crowds. I was like, yeah, she's crazy.
We were going to or from Chipotle.
That's right.
And I just look, I don't want to give anyone any more credit than they deserve. I just remember you being so quick.
And now this is where things get fun. If you've been watching or listening to The Fighter and the Kid for a long time, you might have known that at some point, Brendan Schaub and Whitney Cummings were about to be a thing, but the whole thing didn't happen, and it ended when Whitney Cummings found out that Schaub had an actual family. And what's funny is that a lot of people think that because of this attraction that Whitney had towards Brendan Schaub, she actually pushed him and helped him out a lot in, into getting started in stand-up. So essentially making her the actual responsible person for Brendan Schaub's career in stand-up comedy.
You have a body like Patrice and a head like Beetlejuice.
You look like an albino earthworm. You just ugly for no reason.
You
look like some shit from Men in Black. You look like you'll be in there.
You'll
be around the coffee machine.
You look like you look like Lizzo dressed like Suge Knight for Halloween.
Oh my God. Chaos.
Now, to be fair to Whitney, she is no longer virtual signaling, and it kind of looks like she's back to her old self because she did have a great appearance on the Flagrant podcast in which she destroyed Andrew Schultz. I recommend you watch that episode or watch my video about it. It was very funny. But yeah, it'll be interesting to see what happens in the future.
What's good money?
Pull up your account.
My phone is dead.
Okay.
What is good?
Until you can pull up your account, then.
Well, give us an idea. Why does it have to be about me? Is a couple
I'm
million
losing my
enough?
voice.
Is a couple million enough?
Maybe.
Yeah.
Isn't that wild? Like nowadays, the market is so inflated that to get a 31-year-old girl,
You know what's funny though?
you need to have multi-million dollars. Like to get a ran through 31-year-old like sweatpants Birkin bag, you
I
need
know.
to have multiple M's in the bank.
I know.
That's insane.
You can't just be funny and have a 8-inch hammer anymore.
Hold on.
Guys, welcome to Better Bachelor. My name is Joker with a face for radio and a voice for print. Today's story, I found a reporter on Tinder that wrote up a story for an online website. And she said, you know something, I actually made a man's profile on Tinder. I swiped, and all the reports and everything I've heard about women are true, which is it's kind of terrible out there for guys, and women are being picky and unrelatable. And women are kind of suck on the dating apps. This is from an Olivia Reingold. Olivia Reingold. She says, for this story, I set up an online dating profile as a man. My sources were right. The apps are full of demands for a tall, fit guy or a provider. A few swipes in, I spotted this warning on a woman's profile. If you one of those split the check or not wealthy, next. And this is something, you know, we've talked about time after time, and women come out and say, nah, it's crap and everything else. But the truth of it is, women's expectations have gone nuts. And I have a couple, actually, Tinder metrics where people will swipe, and based on the texts and based on the AI of Tinder, can build a profile that tells you kind of their dating history. And I found a couple guys' profiles that are tall, dark, handsome, and they pretend to have money. They've even admitted this themselves. So it doesn't necessarily mean they have money, but they're fit, they're tall, and they're good looking, and they fake having the money, and they have no problems with women. This woman posted here on Twitter, X, she says, women just want a good mid guy to call their own. Men will never understand that. And she posts a picture of Henry Cavill. Now again, is she being facetious? Is she being funny? Who knows? But the truth of it is, we know that if Henry Cavill wasn't in Superman shape, but he was in dad bod shape, he would have a lot less luck than he has now.
Det er faktisk bedre, så jeg skulle overhovedet ikke ind i alle G-bit shit. Altså, jeg har aldrig nogensinde praktiseret det.
So let me read the article that I have, and then I'll show you those couple of Tinder profiles that I was talking about. So this is from Olivia here, and she wrote this up today, as a matter of fact. She says, and I apologize for any background noise, my battery terminals are feeding me juice and the fans turn on because I'm sucking. I'd just be...
Nå, Q skulle lige op til en dungeon mere. Glem kraftigt, men det var daily. Det var så ikke så godt. Jeg troede fandme lige, jeg havde fået Darkroom The Shoulders. Og helvede, så var det fandme... Så var det ringer og tier. Yikes. Det er jo ikke fordi de er super gode, men det er bare, det kunne være nice nok. Jeg har jo trods alt low eye level shoulders. Så jeg lower det heller ikke.
Hey guys, Adrian back with you. I feel bad for the video I posted yesterday. It was terrible on every level. So I'm gonna try to make it up today. So I have a wall here I just marked out. I showed in my previous video. Now I'm gonna show you how I frame it up. I got a full quilt in here. Using those high flow fittings makes a bit of a difference. Hopefully this angle is better. Oh, YouTube's not gonna like that hit. Trick here. Whiteboard wall, 2x6 on the flat. I'm gonna put a 14.5 block on top of it. Perfect backing. Beam pushed out here. Gonna build them all on the ground, then boom them in. There's the bottom done.
Hej. Hej Hassel. Hvorfor går der? Du går på vej hen. Hvorfor?
Ja, vi fik iser, og jeg har slet.
Nå.
Og slet til dig.
Mor, hun er en værre en. Jeg kunne se, hun handler i Gærlev. Det er ikke noget far, hun kan lide.
Ja, det er.
Hej.
Altså på hans is, han har i hånden. Det var nogen, der gav dem på legepladsen. Jeg har ikke købt dem.
Nå, jamen det var mere Gærlev af Big City skat.
Ja, men det er fordi, de havde ikke æbleskiver i Råby. Eller hverken Råby eller Øse. Jeg havde lyst til æbleskiver. Gå hjem til far, Fjord, han hjælper. Hjælp ham hjælper.
Ja, altså det er bare fordi, det er bare alt for dyrt skat. Du kommer... Hvad siger du?
Oh, looks like my plate fell. These things happen.
Nej, jeg sidder og hører noget. Hvad så?
Det var lige, at Fjord hans overtøj. Han har en del sand i skoene.
Nå. Hvad? Ja. Han kommer jo også ind i seng. Hvem? Hvad havde han? Nå, hvem sagde det? Nå.
Så blev han faktisk meget sur og begyndte at kaste på legetøjet og ville ingenting og ville ikke snakke med nogen. Så han kom ud til Kirsten i køkkenet, der spiste han sådan 3 hele rugbrød, og da hun var færdig der var han glad igen.
Mm.
Men det var ham og Karina, der var... Det var Karina, han var meget sur.
Var han meget sur på hende?
Ja.
Hvorfor?
Og hende, der sad med ham, hvor han så begyndte at kaste med legetøj og blev gal og så sur. Der var det Karina, som var sur.
Ja.
Den finder på det store eller det lille.
Det store bord.
Ikke dig!
Jeg vil sidde på storebror.
Det lille bord.
Blev du sur på Karina i dag? Hvorfor gjorde du det?
Lille bord.
Hvorfor blev du sur på Karina i dag? Hvad?
Jeg vil ikke.
Nej, ikke kolde fingre. Ja.
Hvorfor?
Fordi det er koldt på far.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Det er 5.
Really hoping. This guy is supposed to build pools in people's backyards, and the stuff he posts on his website, blogs, podcasts, and social media pages makes it look like he's floating on an ocean of success. Hey there, Brandon. Rob WotLK for Fox 2. Can I talk to you? Meet Brandon Heitman.
Hey, Brandon Heitman here. We can get you a new swimming pool.
Brandon bills himself as a millionaire contractor, an internet personality, a pool builder who's taken the plunge and made a fortune. What a success story. From mowing lawns for $20 to $1 million projects.
Oh, let's go. Let's roll. Love checks. Got a lot of money coming in and a lot of money going out.
This 30-year-old entrepreneur is so successful, he's a mentor to other contractors around the nation. Yep, you can be like Brandon by joining the Heitman Academy, flying in private jets, visiting exotic places, building pools. Let's dive in and check out some of this guy's masterpieces. Like this still unfinished gunite beauty, which was supposed to be completed more than a year ago. It's such a unique design, it won't even pass code. 75% 10-foot deep end and hardly any shallow end.
He doesn't know what he's doing.
How about this fantabulous fiberglass pool that gets deeper every day? Because the owners say it's sagging in the middle and sinking.
Our pool is essentially garbage. It needs to be torn out and started from scratch.
Or how about this pool? Oh, that's right. There is no pool here, even though this couple paid Brandon $60,000.
Everything that he told us was a lie.
Brandon is a special businessman.
He even cried, like tears, like when he wanted me to give him more money.
Crybaby contractor.
He started crying.
I live in Huckster.
He's super arrogant.
Get ready for 2023. Now is the time to grind.
It's sink or swim with Brandon Heitman.
You need to be willing to get outside the comfort zone.
Going outside his comfort zone and maybe going straight into a jail cell. This is Becca and Alex's pool. They paid Brandon Heitman's company Exogen of Shelby Township more than $100,000 to install it. But they say the fiberglass pool was put in crooked, under stress, and won't pass inspection.
The way someone explained it to me is they said take a Rubbermaid tote that you use downstairs for storage and turn it and twist it. Lock it in concrete and fill it with water. there is going to be an extreme amount of tension on every part of that Rubbermaid tote.
They say Brandon Heitman was too busy making videos promoting himself to help them. Soon they found out the guy who was teaching others how to be a successful contractor wasn't even a licensed contractor himself. In fact, he didn't get his license until March of 2023.
I went and pulled the permits. That's when we discovered that they were unlicensed.
The permits were pulled by somebody named Henry Bell, a licensed contractor the couple say they've never met, who's never stepped foot on their property and doesn't even work for Exigent. Alex put together this website to document how terrible their experience has been. But instead of Brandon coming out to help them fix their pool, he sued them for defamation.
To date, I paid him $122,000.
Deanne says she's humiliated by how badly she was heisted by Heitman.
I asked him specifically if he had a license. He said yes.
There's plenty of holes in that story. Here's the main one in her backyard. Pipes are cemented in that are too small. The elevation is off.
Holy.
And it's been like this for 2 whole summers. She told Brandon she's had enough, but Brandon told her he didn't have enough money to bring it up to code.
I'm not the bank. We've paid you for this. And he started crying, saying he's really in a tough spot.
Brandon used the Crybaby Contractor Act on Joe and Angela as well.
He started crying.
They paid Boo-Hoo and Brandon $60,000 for a pool that was supposed to be done this April. But the only thing they have to show is this ridiculous-looking diagram of a pool built into the side of a hill next to their house. And get this, Brandon and the couple were actually friends. Here they are at one of Brandon's wedding parties. Joe asked his friend,
"What have you bought with my money?"
And what does he say?
"I don't have it."
But Brandon did have lots of fancy stuff, a new house in Macomb, a Lamborghini. Remember, this is a guy who posts videos about how successful he is. Man, he runs the Heitman Academy. Wonder if Brandon teaches how to dodge judgments. He is good at that. Attorney Danny Batty's client has a consent judgment against Brandon.
The court is ordering Mr. Heitman and his company to pay the X amount of dollars that was at issue.
And has he paid anything?
No, he has not.
How much did Joe Regaldo get stiffed?
They gave him the full $81,000.
So he gave him $81,000 up front to build the pool?
That's correct.
A similar agreement was made with a guy named Mark Shamaya. Brandon agreed to pay him back $67,000 for a pool that was never even started. Seems like Pool Boy is drowning in debt. His solution? Make more videos trying to get new customers.
Hey, Brandon here. Let me tell you why you need to invest in your new outdoor living space today.
And it must have worked because just 2 weeks ago, a couple in Grosse Pointe say they gave him $75,000 for a new pool. This is what they have so far. Little did they know Exigent was filing for bankruptcy. It happened just last week, a week after Brandon Heitman was arrested and charged with 2 felonies, taking more than $50,000 under false pretenses and fraudulent use of the builder's contract fund. He bonded out of jail on $30,000 cash. And remember, when he drew up the contracts on all these pools, the millionaire contractor didn't even have a contractor's license. Their permits were all pulled by someone named Henry Bell. What's he got to say about it? I went to his house and left cards. Rob WotLK from Fox 2. Looking for Henry Bell. But Henry's never contacted me back. So where is Brandon Heitman? According to their website, this is the headquarters of Exigent Design and Build. But we found out they haven't been here for years. But I did find him at this work yard on 23 Mile in Shelby, pacing around, talking business on the phone, or maybe he's mentoring a student from the Heitman Academy. Time for me to dunk Pool Boy. Can I talk to you? What's that? No, I want to talk to you right now. Brandon, hang on, man. Hey, come on. Here, talk to me. What's going on with your business?
Talk to my attorney.
No, I want to talk to you.
Right out there.
Well, what's going on with your business now? You're a talkative guy. I've seen your videos.
Thank you. Don't run away from pressure.
How's the Heitman Academy going? Why don't you give back the money to the $60,000 to Angela and Joe? Come on, Brandon, talk to me. Come on, dude, roll your window down. Here, you want to take my business card? You can have your attorney contact you. Who's your attorney?
Thank you. I'll have them call you. Thank you.
Okay. Hey, Brandon, come on in. The water's perfect here in the Hall of Shame. I thought he was just a lousy landscaper, but the more I dug in, the dirtier this guy looked. And it's certainly not because he completed anybody's jobs.
Oh. Oh.
Your ass out. Stop. Your ass out, big man. Hey, big man, your ass out. Hold on.
Hey, y'all start over.
Break that shit up. Break that shit up.
Y'all start. I said y'all start over, man. Hey, both y'all start the fuck over, man. I'm telling you, Gibson, stop. Gibson, I just said start over.
Hey, y'all stop. He shitted on himself. He shitted on himself. He shitted, man. Y'all stop, bro. He shitted on himself. Gibson, get up. He shitted on himself. Yeah, leave him alone. He shitted, bro. He stank. Oh. Damn, he shitted, boy. Get up. How the fuck you shit in the middle of a fight?
Get up.
Hey, man, get up or you be stank, bitch.
Man, get up. He shit on.
Jo.
The last time.
Der kommer.
Time you were on the show, a lot happened. There was a lot of chatter, a lot of conversation coming out of that episode, a lot of potential misconception, misconstruing, judgment. Is there anything that you guys, Logan, Jake, either you guys want to say to each other, or any clarity that you want to maybe speak out on this episode while we're sitting back together again?
I think that when the higher you climb, the windier it gets.
Der lige venner.
And especially as brothers, and brothers always in mostly actually brothers in families, older brother, younger brother, roughly 1 to 2 years apart, maybe 3 years apart, have the toughest relationship with one another. And ours just happens to have each people watching us go through ebbs and waves. And I didn't want that conversation to air. I said that to everybody, and I said it just makes us both look bad. And you guys still aired it. And it was a conversation that we don't have often, and people never understand like how busy our lives get. And finding the time to have those conversations sometimes is impossible. And that's unfortunately what happened. But I think it felt good to have it and just get some frustrations off the chest.
The content of the conversation wasn't the issue. The issue was that it was aired online. And you were right. And Schultz asked me, why did that conversation see the light of day? You know, there's scrubbing that needs to be done with internally of why that happened. I think it was just the speed at which we move, the busy lives that we live. It's like I don't often get the implications of what the fuck I'm doing, and I think it was just like a record, post, move on situation.
We had the call out, but I think you and I, at the end of the day, it comes down to a conversation between you and I. We get feedback from the people who watch and review, and I think we've always strived on this show to show a side of ourselves that we don't always love that much. If something comes out that portrays...
Jeg er ved at spille, skat, ikke? Og jeg kommer ud, når jeg er færdig.
I'm saying, like we are in a position where our lives...
Ja, jeg siger, jeg er ved at spille, så jeg kommer, når jeg er færdig.
...is here for people to critique. And sometimes that can be good, and sometimes that can be bad. People will watch an episode, and brothers especially, and be like, oh, I've had a conversation like that with my brother. Or maybe he got a little too far here. Logan has some stuff he needs to work on, which the big takeaway for me is, Jake, you're so wise. Like, you're the little brother, but in many ways, I think you're more emotionally mature than me. And you've given me a ton of like feedback on my character, my personal direction in life, and I don't think there's anything wrong with that, dude. Like, I am a severely imperfect human being, and sometimes I need to be re-railed and steered back in the right direction, and like, you know, everyone in this room is here to help me do that, and sometimes I need to...
And to help each other.
Yeah,
it's not just like, and everyone's severely imperfect, and like you said earlier, we are in the world of being watched, talked. People want to see us fall oftentimes, and we're just here to help each other, all as humans, get better.
Trying. You help me get a message better. Feedback, and honestly, being in this camp has been nice because I can internalize. Even just sitting down on this podcast, to be honest, is like hard for me. I'm so ingrained in camp. I had a great workout this morning. We're gonna go to the track right after this. Like, it's all I'm thinking about. It's all I want to do. And so when I'm in that mode, I get a chance to find out and think about who I am and who I want to be more than when I'm on the road shooting podcasts, doing content, performing for WWE. Like, I'm really just shaping. I'm shaping my body. I'm shaping my mind. And I like the position I'm in. Like, I get to take that and not approach it with an ego first standpoint.
Yeah. And to be fair, that's why, like, I say boxing saved my life, because it gave me the time to step back, and it's all I've been doing for 3 years, like, locked away here, doing that shit, and time moves slower, and days matter so much versus compared to the other lifestyle, like you're saying, so you get that time and space, not only with yourself, but the people that matter to you, and you can kind of see yourself evolving, and you have the clearest form of thinking because you're in this healthy mode, and there's no distractions.
I'm so stupid sober.
And there's no distractions, and it's just you. So I think that's why boxing has helped me become this different person. Like, I never thought I would be like how I am today, but it started with boxing.
Me either, to be honest with you. Yeah. I was thinking about it this morning on my drum probe. I was like, damn, boxing really saved Jake's life. And at least for this interim that I'm doing the boxing, it's altering mine in a way that I like, you know, thus far. Got a job to do, got to show up and get it done, but that's why I'm giving all these practices 100%. I want to finish this camp not thinking of a single moment where I wish I would have went harder, or I wish I would have eaten that late night cheat meal or something like that. It's also gotten easier in my adulthood. You know, when we first started these camps, it was kind of foreign, and we weren't really sure what to do or how to act or trust ourselves to be disciplined. Feels like my life now, and it's just what you do.
And it's more fun because it's easier. When we first got in, bro, like, we were getting our faces fucked up every day, bleeding all over. You couldn't move your arms, your elbows are torn up, and then it's like 9 a.m. You're getting hit in the fucking face in your living room. Like, even the jumping rope at the beginning of the workout was hard. Now it's just like that. and it gets more fun because of that, which is why I've continued to found like new love and passion for it.
It's definitely. I just wanted to pose that to you guys and just let you guys have like a little bit of a moment because, like I said, we do show some stuff on this channel that is us in our imperfect self, and I go straight to Logan and myself, and you too, Jake. I think we've all had moments on the show where we've said things that we wish we had, and the strength of it is that a lot of that stuff does go out, and that has really hurt us a lot of times. That has really hurt us a lot of times. But I think it's an important lesson. And the only problem that I have with it as I continue to move on here, coming up on year 7 as part of this camp, is that you and I still watch it, think to ourselves, this will go out and people will see it and they'll understand where we were coming from or where Logan was coming from, and they'll see that there wasn't enough. But no matter how long we do this, the belief will always be that you have maliciously made every single decision, and that I have maliciously made every single decision and all this. And that's the thing that hurts. It always hurts to know that people think that you're doing these things, when in reality, as you just said a couple minutes ago, it's like and so that's like the toughest pill that I've always had to swallow, is just knowing that there are people out there who think that this guy's a bad person, just through and through, just a bad person. You know what I'm saying? And by the way, and just so you know, and you can relate to this as well, it reflects upon us too. As long as I stay close to him with the belief set of people that he's a bad person, that makes me a bad person.
So Joe Rogan has built a good reputation for having a podcast that takes no BS, is willing to call out even his closest of friends, and isn't afraid to sit through some very uncomfortable moments. And it's disagreements like the one with Steven Crowder, Candace Owens, and the many disagreements with Eddie Bravo that have made content. However, even for the protagonist like Rogan, there are times where they get put on the spot and make for some dicey content. Said, let's get started.
How do you say the rock, paper, scissors? Intuition. Can we play right now? Yes. Okay.
How about I do the programming on your show for a week?
No. That's worth a lot of money. That's not possible. We're booked up months and months in advance. No. That's ridiculous. There's nothing that you can give me that would be worth a week of programming on the show. What are you going to give me? Like, if you have put a monetary equivalent to that, it would have to be a spectacular amount of money for me to let someone else program the show. That was one of the big things about doing the show on Spotify. It could have no impact at all.
So episode 1572 of the Joe Rogan Experience was with Moxie Martin Spike, I believe that's how you pronounce, who is the founder of social media app Signal. And Joe does have a good point that it's almost impossible to know how much a week's worth of programming the show is worth. Because, for example, even Spotify, which is a $25 billion company, couldn't get to that price because, according to Joe Rogan,
money is off the table.
Money's off the table? Someone's scared to lose at rock, paper, scissors.
It sounds like someone else is scared of this.
No, you're asking me for something that's ridiculous. You don't have anything. You don't have anything that's worth a week of programming on the show. You don't have it.
That's rough.
It doesn't exist.
That's rough.
No, it doesn't. It literally doesn't exist.
Now, what's interesting or funny about that is that prior to that, Rogan was talking about the podcast as just being something that he does, kind of not making it seem like it was that important. But when it came down to making a bet about the show's programming for a whole week, Rogan gets triggered and he makes it a point that the guests know that there is nothing that he could give him in exchange for a week's worth of programming in the show, which at some point it gets pretty awkward. And Moxie deserves some type of credit for actually asking Joe Rogan that. And although that entire exchange was awkward, it wasn't really as personal as the episode with Elijah.
Yeah, Bernie Sanders.
Okay, but did you vote for Bernie?
He wasn't available to vote for.
Did you vote in the?
I didn't vote in the primary.
Primaries, right?
Yeah.
I did.
But I had him on my podcast. And he was very sincere.
Okay, cool. I've
I
had my
think-
mom on my podcast. You want to flex? I'm just saying.
I think he's very sincere. I think he, he's very idealistic. But give that a chance. Maybe that's better than someone who's fucking jaded.
I mean, I don't understand what one has to do with the other. I was just saying I liked her, but it's only
one has to do with the other.
What?
Elijah has been on the Joe Rogan Experience multiple times and is definitely not a fan favorite. For example, I believe 5 years ago, she was telling Joe Rogan a story about how a guy approached her and a group of 5 friends asking for a lighter and how it was the worst thing ever.
We came out of the show last night, this like girls' night in show, and everybody was feeling great. We walk outside, and this like dude walks up and goes, "We want to go to the lighter." You're walking into a group of 5 girls having a lively conversation, and you put yourself in the middle. And I walked away. I go, "I'm not doing that." And he like started chirping at us. What's your problem? Who has a bike? And dumb friends are like, "I think I do, sir." And I'm like, "This is not the time to demonstrate how compassionate you are. Don't give him a lighter. Like, there's no reason to go anywhere else. You're obviously a crazy person."
But that's another instance where a guy will do that because he's big, because he can get away with it. The guy's not going to do that to a group of guys.
And what actually made that video more cringe is the fact that Joe Rogan was just agreeing with her on everything. And Joe Rogan saying that a guy wouldn't go up to a group of 5 guys to ask for a lighter is ridiculous. So with that being said, watching the most recent exchange was pretty odd because the whole conversation started with them disagreeing on almost everything, like her bringing up the Rock's cheat meals and then disagreeing about something very silly. That at least it shows that Rogan wasn't just going to agree with everything that she was saying.
Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson, I'm calling you out. Look at this. Coconut banana pancakes smothered with peanut butter blessed with maple syrup.
That's pretty indulgent.
I don't know, something about it.
It doesn't make any sense to me. I'm just trying to see your perspective, but it doesn't.
I'm not seeing the full caloric blast. I'm wanting to see a full back of bacon. I'm wanting to see heavy whipped cream. Maple syrup, fruit compote.
I don't know. It's normal to me.
Okay. Well, thanks for having me.
But when they started talking about politics, things went south pretty quick. The podcast didn't last too much longer after that, which is pretty strange because if you know, Rogan doesn't really do short podcasts unless it's like an A-list celebrity that has like a time crunch or something like that, like Jamie Foxx or Robert Downey Jr. Usually not the case when it comes to comedians or friends, but the podcast with her was only 2 hours long. Now, to be fair to Elijah, Rogan does have a track record of not getting jokes and taking things a little bit too serious, which was the case with Shane Gillis.
So he was talking to me and he was like, "No, we think we can." He's like, "If we just get you to the first episode, like people will see you're not a piece of shit person.
Right.
Like, just talk." And I was like, "Whatever, I'll do. If I get fired here, whatever, I'll just go do Joe Rogan next week and I'll be fine." Anyway, I thought that was funny. No?
What?
I was like, I
Is that what
literally
you thought?
I literally thought that.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I thought it'd be funny.
Well, it could have been funny.
Yeah.
I was booked up, though.
No, it's fine. It was just funny to truly. That was a conversation I actually had.
Really?
In Lorne Michaels' office, in the middle of that.
That's hilarious.
I was in pure panic.
Terror?
Yeah.
Yeah.
But
because I remember somebody contacted me like to have you on, and I was like, I don't have any room. Like for a long, I could do like an emergency podcast, but I'm like, let this dude ride this out.
Yeah.
And then we'll do one eventually.
Truly glad that did not happen. Because I would have come in emotional.
Yeah.
I would have come in like,
Guns
what happened to
blazing.
me isn't fair.
Right.
You know? And I never felt that way. Like the whole time I was like, I kind of get it.
Shane Gillis was fired from SNL around September of 2019 and had his first Joe Rogan appearance a little bit under 2 years after that. You can tell Shane Gillis had no bad intentions and it was just making a simple joke about how Joe Rogan was way bigger than SNL, but it didn't land, and there's a possibility that Rogan thought that he was calling him out for not having him on when he asked right after he got fired. Regardless, since then, Joe Rogan has massively helped out Shane Gillis's career, and Shane now has a #1 podcast on Patreon, which puts Tim Dillon at number 5, I believe, and his YouTube channel, his podcast on his YouTube channel is completely killing it. Keep in mind, they only have one camera shot, no crazy lighting, no studio, and no insane editing or anything like that. But now we get to the toughest one to watch, and that was when back then Freddie Gibbs was completely going in on Joe Rogan when he had his controversy for the usage of the N-word.
What the fuck is going on in this bitch? And goddamn, I know what's and shit, but the world is changing. Shit. Joe Rogan saying and shit.
It's been years.
Nah, that wasn't years. That was days.
Let it go. Let it go. Let it go.
He said every feeling looked like a monkey.
A lot of days. A lot of days. A lot of days, but years.
Listen, hey, Joe, let me tell you something. You lucky I got family in Philadelphia because they was coming here to you up, man.
This happened last year, and it was right after Joe Rogan was involved in a cancellation attempt. I remember back then, everybody, including comics, UFC fighters, everyone came out and backed up Joe Rogan. There were only a few that didn't. And now looking back, watching Freddie do that to Joe Rogan is pretty intense because Freddie has been on the Joe Rogan Experience before, but I don't know if he will be back in the future because you could tell that Rogan was getting visibly upset, even at some point hitting himself in the face with a microphone.
I said, listen, I held all this back on behalf of Joe. Y'all give me a round of applause.
Thank you. Thank you, and please tell all your friends
I said, hey, Joe, I know he got Dave Chappelle and shit, but you know, Dave Chappelle ain't in the motherfucking streets. His wife Asian and shit. Oh my God. Dave Chappelle ain't no gangster like me. I
appreciate
Dave.
that.
I know, white boy. You better appreciate it. I'm appreciate. Look, we got to talk because we got to work something out for that. You got the approval from the realest ever, nigga.
We talked about that today.
We got that. We go
Very
through
important.
all that, baby.
All right, listen, this is going to be on Patreon on Joe Rogan's podcast.
Joe Rogan is about to give reparations.
Oh, my. Freddie, get back over here. Get back over here.
And you just don't know it.
Freddie, you did much more than your minute. How about a hand for Freddie Gibbs, everybody?
Obviously, there was not much that Joe Rogan could say in that moment, and the little that he would say would only give Freddie some ammo so he could come back with some slam dunks. Even Dave Chappelle got roasted just for being friends with Joe Rogan. And according to Rogan, the controversy didn't really affect the numbers that much, and instead they kept increasing every month. Regardless, it's always funny seeing some of the biggest people out there in the industry getting roasted when it's not specifically a comedy roast or whatever. But I think that's all we have for today. Let me know what you think in the comments below. Leave a like, subscribe to the channel to support. Dislike if you didn't like it.
Hey, WotLK.
But yeah, that's all we have for today. See ya.
Hello, bro. Out of there.
Yo, we're talking about, welcome to the Bill Burr recovery group.
Yeah.
The Sons of Hodeo. Hvad fanden har jeg ikke noget rap med dem? Hvor helvede er det her? Hvad er der overhovedet, at jeg... Hvad fanden er det? Nå, der. Skal vi... Jeg ved ikke, om vi skal køre til Harald Nyborg senere, så jeg lige kan få på Vaders. Nu kommer jeg ud og laver mad nu. Helvede, at de hedder Bold. Det hedder bold, hvad? Bold.